Om Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Purana Nyaya Mimamsa Dharmashastranga Mishritaha Vedaha Sthanani Vidyanam Dharmasya Cha Chaturdasha Ayurvedo Dhanurvedo Gandharvaschaiva Tetrayaha Arthashastram Chaturtantu Vidyaha Aṣtādhyāyī.
Ayum Rilrik Ayum Ayot Hayavarat Lan Ramagananam Jabhain Gadadash Javagadadash Kapachatata Chatato Kapai Shashasar ಹಲ್ ಆಹಾ, ನಾನು ಕಾಯುತ್ತಿದ್ದ ಕ್ಷಣ ಬಂದೇ ಬಂದಿತು. ನನ್ನ ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿ ಸೂರ್ಯ ಉದಯಿಸಿದ. ಈಶ್ವರನ ಕೃಪೆಯಾಯಿತು. ಇದೇ ಶಿವಸೂತ್ರ ಜಾಲ. ಆಹಾ, ಎಂಥ ಅದ್ಭುತ ಈ ಶಬ್ದಜಾಲ. ಈ ಸೂತ್ರಗಳು ಮಹೇಶ್ವರನ ವರಪ್ರಸಾದ. ಮಹೇಶ್ವರನ ವರಪ್ರಸಾದ. ಐವುಣ್ Rilrik, Ayong, Ayot, Hayavarat, Lan, Ramagananam, Jabhai, Gadadash, Jabagadadash, Kapachatata Chatato, Kapai, Shashasar, Hal. Nrittavasane Natarajarajo नादढक्कां नवपञ्चवारम् उद्धर्तु कामः सनकादिसिद्धान् एतद्विमर्शे शिवसूत्रजालम् एतद्विमर्शे शिवसूत्रजालम् एतद्विमर्शे शिवसूत्रजालम् एतद्विमर्शे ಶಿವಸ್ಯ ಸೂತ್ರಜಾಲಂ. ಮಹೇಶ್ವರನ ಡಮರುಗದಿಂದಲೇ ನೇರವಾಗಿ ಹೊಮ್ಮಿ ಬಂದ ಇವು ಮಾಹೇಶ್ವರ ಸೂತ್ರಗಳು. ಮಾಹೇಶ್ವರ ಸೂತ್ರಗಳು. ಈ ಸೂತ್ರ ಸ್ತಂಭಗಳ ಆಧಾರದ ಮೇಲೆ ಭಾಷಾ ಭವನವನ್ನೇ ನಿರ್ಮಿಸುತ್ತೇನೆ. ವ್ಯಾಕರಣ ಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ಶಿಲ್ಪವನ್ನು ಕೆತ್ತುತ್ತೇನೆ. ಏನಾಕ್ಷರ ಸಮಾಮ್ನಾಯಂ ಅಧಿಗಮ್ಯ ಮಹೇಶ್ವರಾತ್ ಕೃತ್ಸ್ನಂ ವ್ಯಾಕರಣಂ ಪ್ರೋಕ್ತಂ ತಸ್ಮೈ ಪಾಣಿನಯೇ ನಮಃ. ಯೇನ ಅಕ್ಷರ ಸಮಾಮ್ನಾಯಂ ಅಧಿಗಮ್ಯ ಮಹೇಶ್ವರಾತ್ ಕೃತ್ಸ್ನಂ ವ್ಯಾಕರಣಂ ಪ್ರೋಕ್ತಂ ತಸ್ಮೈ ಪಾಣಿನಯೇ ನಮಃ. ತಸ್ಮೈ ಪಾಣಿನಯೇ ನಮಃ. ತಸ್ಮೈ ಪಾಣಿನಯೇ ನಮಃ.
Namaste. With that invocation of Maharishi Pāṇini, I welcome everyone who's joined us today for the symposium, Vyakarana as a meta-discipline of Indic thought, brought to you by Indica's Center for Bharatiya Languages. Before I hand over the proceedings to Arvind Iyer, the guest curator of the symposium, who will explain the symposium concept, I will close this invocation, which began by invoking Maharishi Pāṇini, by reading out names that are on your screen right now, names that have been mentioned as Maharishi Pāṇini's predecessors in volume 2 of Sanskrit Vāṅmaya ka Brihad Itihas, The names are Shiva Maheshwara, Brihaspati, Indra, Vayu, Bharadwaja, Bhaguri, Paushkarasadi, Charayana, Kasha Kritsna, Shantanu, Vyaghra Padya, Madhyandini, Raudhi, Shaunaki, Gautam, Vyadi, Apishadi, Kashyapa, Gargya, Galava, Chakravarman, Bharadwaja again, Shakatayana, Shakalya, Senaka, Sphotayana, Audambarayana. Over to you, Arvind.
Om Tat Sat. I join Meghji in welcoming our distinguished panelists and attendees who have joined us online this morning for the symposium on Vyakarana as a meta-discipline of Indic thought, presented by the Indica Center for Bharatiya Languages. The symposium has begun with a tribute to the early scholars of Vyakarana and to the monumental work of Pāṇini. The essential guide to the Aṣtādhyāyī of Pāṇini, the Mahabhashya of Patañjali, which is monumental in its own right, opens with Atha Shabdanushāsanam, now the discipline of words. As a discipline of words, Vyakarana has been more than just one among the numerous classical Indian disciplines. Vyakarana has been called a meta-discipline of Indic thought in the name of the symposium. One inspiration to call Vyakarana a meta-discipline is a contrast between Vyakarana and what is called grammar in modern schooling. While learning any Indic language, say Marathi, especially as a second language in school, it's common to hear students say we managed to pass the school subject without ever becoming fluent, just by scoring well in the grammar section by mechanically applying rules. Such a disconnect between the mechanics of grammar and meaningful expression is not what we observe in the Vyakarana tradition. We instead observe the most flourishing connections. The Aṣtādhyāyī of Pāṇini is an exquisite marvel of systematization of rules. And this became a secure foundation and a launching pad for Vyakarana to embrace the full variety of human expression, rather than become an impediment. In the Aṣtādhyāyī is a practical manual for the discipline of words. The Vakyapadiya of Bhartṛhari is its theoretical complement, dealing with questions like how meaning relates to words and how a stable meaning is sustained and recognized amid endless diversity in utterances. A misconception that is prevalent about Indian knowledge systems, including Indian mathematics, is that ancient Indians somehow obtained interesting results and were adept at algorithmic manipulations, but did not develop deeper theoretical foundations. Modern scholarship is only beginning to acknowledge what was always a traditional understanding of the intimate relation between the technology of language in the Aṣtādhyāyī and the philosophy of language in the Vakyapadiya. This is thanks to scholarly work like that of our own Professor Nagaraj Paturiji, whom we will have the pleasure of hearing later in this session. The disconnect between grammar and live expression in modern schooling is something we can also see in how poetry is assumed to have a very uneasy relationship with grammar. In the Indic tradition, though, there is no sign of unease or incompatibility in the relation between Kavya and Vyakarana. In the vast corpus of Sanskrit poetry, from the epics to spontaneous verses composed during Sahityavadhana gatherings today, the deepest and loftiest emotions are given expression with barely any lapse from the metrical order of Chandas and the discipline of Vyakarana. Even a treatise on poetics, like the Sringara Prakasha of Bhojadeva Paramara, has sections devoted to a review of grammar. Vyakarana is therefore not a standalone discipline of syntax, but truly a meta-discipline with linguistics and semantics and poetics in its scope. Today, we look forward to hearing from Dr. Sharda Narayanan ji how there is no flight from grammar in Sanskrit poetry, but the light of Vyakarana shines throughout. The modern-day distancing of the sacred from the everyday is also not seen in the origins of Vyakarana, whose scope includes both laukika or real-world everyday use of language, as well as the proper study of words constituting the sacred Veda. After all, Vyakarana in its origins is close to the revelation of the Veda itself, and in purpose is intended to serve the living Veda as a living organ, as a Vedāṅga. In Vyakarana, we thus see continuity after continuity, like the continuity from the formal discipline of words to freely spoken language, the continuity from syntax to poetry, and the continuity from the Laukika to the Vaidika. What is it in the textual foundations that endows Vyakarana with this character of a meta-discipline is what we look forward to hearing from Dr. Samya Krishnapur ji today, from the perspective of an educator of Vyakarana as both a pure and applied science. Another inspiration to call Vyakarana a meta-discipline is how the approaches of Vyakarana can be seen operating underneath all of Shastra literature. In the discourse on Shastra studies, a frequently quoted saying is Kanadam Pāṇiniyam cha Sarva Shastropakarakam. Every discipline in the Indian knowledge systems, be it in the natural sciences or social sciences or arts, is said to have a Pāṇiniya foundation, that is Vyakarana as a foundation, simultaneously along with a Kanada foundation, which is logic as formulated in the Nyaya system. All textual study is said to require investigation and understanding at three levels of pada or words, vakya or statements, and pramana or proof, which are respectively the subject matter of Vyakarana, Mimamsa and Nyaya Shastras. We have the immense privilege today of hearing from Mahamahopadhyaya Professor Korada Subramanyam ji on this triple foundation and the literature it supports in his lecture titled Vyakarana vis-a-vis Nyaya, Mimamsa and Sahitya Shastras. The framework of Vyakarana pervasively underpins the Shastras in the basic sutra formulation itself and in the use of Vyakarana as an interpretive tool by commentators and expositors. And this includes not just the earliest Bhashyakaras and Vartikakaras and Tikakaras, but also the scholars participating in Vakyartha sessions today. The Aṣtādhyāyī of Pāṇini remains the abiding gold standard of the sutra format itself, that is ubiquitous in Shastra literature, be it geometry in the Shulva Sutra or the foundational sutra texts of the Shat Darshana schools, Nyaya Sutra, Brahma Sutra, and Yoga Sutra. To this day, a scholar participating in a Vakyartha Goshti as a specialist in Nyaya or a specialist in Yoga cannot afford to leave Vyakarana behind while entering the arena. In the lecture by Dr. Jayaraman Mahadevan ji today, we will see illustrations from Yoga Shastra on the rewards of diligence in Vyakarana, both in Yoga Darshana for scholars and Yoga Sadhana for practitioners, and also hear about the risks of neglecting Vyakarana. Now, if Vyakarana was a shared platform for so many branches of learning, how readily could aspiring learners access this platform? Like proprietary tools today with their varieties of licensing and paywalls, what about the barriers to accessing the tools of Vyakarana? These questions will be addressed today in the talk by Satyan Sharma ji, who will explore clues from Dharmashastra, Itihasa, and historical records on the accessibility of Vyakarana across social classes. So in summary, Vyakarana has through the ages been the archetypal scholastic endeavor, supplying a template for Shastras to develop their formalisms and supplying a basis of intelligibility for Kavya to then expand the scope of expression. This symposium proceeds to an emphasis on Vyakarana as applied in other Shastras and Kavya. After an analysis of some key texts considered pivotal to the study of Vyakarana as a meta-discipline. It is now my pleasure and honor to invite our first speaker for today, Dr. Samya Krishnapur, who is the Chief Linguistics Scholar at Vyoma Labs, Bengaluru, who will be speaking on teaching Vyakarana the meta-discipline, pointers for textual analysis of some primers. Before I turn it over to Samya ji, let me introduce her. Samya Krishnapur ji has been learning and teaching Sanskrit for more than 20 years. She had her basic training in Sanskrit at the Gita Govinda Samskrita Sangha, Bangalore, under the guidance of Mata Vidushi Anantalakshmi Natarajan and Sri Venkata Subramanyam. She later completed her Acharya Vyakarana from the Rashtriya Sanskrit Samsthan, Sringeri, learning from scholars like Dr. Chandrasekhar Bhatt, Dr. Narasimhamurthy, and Dr. Krishnananta Padmanabha. Saumyaji has obtained her PhD with SRF in the area of Vyakarana under the guidance of Dr. P. Narasimhan, Department of Sanskrit, University of Madras. She has learned the Paushpi Prakriya under Dr. Pushpa Dikshit. She has taught Vyakarana for 8 years at the postgraduate level as part of teaching assistants during her PhD program. She has been teaching through Vyoma Samskrita Patashala for more than 10 years and has conducted more than 20 popular courses through this portal. As part of the Gita Govinda Samskrita Sangha, Bangalore, she has trained children for various simple Sanskrit exams of Surat Saraswati Sabha and Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. Saumyaji is currently the Chief Linguistic Scholar at Vyoma's Linguistic Labs Foundation. She has been part of the organization since its inception and has contributed to the development of several multimedia tools for Sanskrit learning. She has presented research papers in various national and international conferences, and her articles have been published in several journals of repute. Over to you, Saumyaji.
Thank you, Arvind. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, screen is visible.
Namassabhabhyah sabhapatibhyashcha. Gurureva gatirgurumeva bhaje gurunaiva sahasmi namo gurave na guroh paramam shishurasmi guror matirasti gurau mama pahi guro. Namah Pāṇini and Patanjalibhyash Shabda Vidya Sampradaya Kartrabhyo Namo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyah. Good morning to all. Vyakarana, as Arvind Mahodaya has just now presented, is a very wide and varied discipline with two major facets when we look at it. Right? It is a very important Upaya Shastra or an Upakaraka for the study of any other discipline that we can think of in Samskrita. Right? So from the language, including any Shastra like Vedanta, Mimamsa, Nyaya, or even the Kavyas, it is considered essential, okay, indispensable to have the basic working knowledge of Vyakarana. And when I say Vyakarana, as mentioned, it is the Pāṇinian system of Vyakarana and not just the general grammar as such. And of course, it is also an Upeya or a Swatanta Shastra of its own merit. If we look at just a very brief look at the expanse of the Shastra, we have the basic structure of Sutra, Vartika, Bhashya, on which there are several different kinds of texts, right? So hundreds of texts developed over several millennia, including texts which build Vyakarana as a separate darshana with its own spota and other concepts, right? So it is a very wide area where it is possible to specialize, spend a whole lifetime, or maybe even several lifetimes studying the Shastra. But when we look at the other aspect as an Upaya Shastra, as we keep hearing, and I'm sure we'll hear this again through all the lectures today, Kāṇādam Pāṇiniyam cha Sarvashastropakārakam. So for all Shastras, it forms the foundation. Actually, the conceptualization of Vyakarana itself, looking at the beginning of Mahabhashya, in the first Paspashanhika, where Patanjali first raises the question on why Vyakarana, the Prayojanas he lists, Rakshohagama Lakha Sandehaha Vyakaranam, they are all oriented towards other Shastras, mainly Veda, but it also extends to all other texts. So the purpose of Vyakarana is to help the preservation, raksha of Veda and the Shastras in their original form. It is to enable people to extend the forms in that. For asandeha, for conviction, a doubtless interpretation of words or the meaning of any Shastra, Vyakarana is absolutely indispensable. Right. So this is not a point which I am making today. I am sure there are many other papers who are focusing on this aspect from the point of view of other Shastras. So even when we are studying Vyakarana, again and again we hear the terms Prayoga Sharanaha, Vyakaranaha. So Vyakarana, as I said, it goes behind Prayoga. It is not saying leading the one and say everybody follow it. So it underlies all Shastras, it analyzes the Prayogas and tries to build a framework around it. In the Tarka Sangraha, which is meant as a primer for Tarka Shastra, say Balanam Sukhabodhaya, he says it is for ease of learning of a Bala, roughly translated to a beginner. But a beginner in Tarka Shastra should have already studied Vyakarana. So Adhita Vyakarana Koshadiman, only somebody who has already studied Vyakarana is qualified to enter the other meta discipline of Tarka. So Vyakarana is a very important Upaya Shastra. Right? So to give a very simple example which may help us relate. So it is like using the sutras and learning to drive a car to reach the destination. So learning to use Vyakarana is something like that. We need to understand the sutras, the basic framework to reach anywhere in the Shastra. Right? So that is a skill of using Vyakarana as an Upaya Shastra for other Shastras. There is also the very learned mechanic who knows the entire piece by piece, the parts of the car, who knows how to repair it, how to build a car. That is a different thing. That is a specialization for Vyakaranas. Not all of us know that. Some of us may know to replace a burst tire. Others may not even know that. But we need the skill to get around. And that much of Vyakarana is essential for everybody. Right? So taking this, when we look at the profile of learners who approach Vyakarana, on one side we have the specialist studies. There are learners who study Vyakarana as their specialization, core elective or specialized Shastra in Pathashalas or various UG and PG disciplines. We have very committed scholars who study for exams like Tenali, right, where there are 14 levels of specialization, where you study texts of Vyakarana one after the other. There are also other Shastra Vidvans, a Tarka Vidvan or a Vedanta, again, traditional scholars who are studying Vyakarana as an additional discipline. So this is one kind where we usually find that they are involved in a regular or a full-time study, a Pratyaksha Patha with a Guru. They are willing to invest a very high amount of time and effort into mastering the Shastra. And usually they have also the advantage of age with them, where they're usually young, right? But we also have the other kind of learners, say those who have just studied Sanskrit language through various exams, and they are getting introduced to Vyakarana after their basic language training. There are learners who want to qualify themselves for studying various branches of IKS or Indian knowledge systems, just basically all the other Shastras in Vedanta or Nyaya or computational linguistics, something like that. And there are learners who also want to appreciate the structure and precision of Aṣtādhyāyī, which has gathered quite limelight these days. We know that the Aṣtādhyāyī is a monumental tribute to human intellect. The way it is structured, the kind of knowledge compression tools or even programming concepts which underlie the structure of Aṣtādhyāyī is very fascinating for many of them. When we see these kinds of learners who are also studying Vyakarana, they also need Vyakarana. Actually, maybe they may be the majority, the car drivers, who actually want to use Vyakarana, a basic understanding of Vyakarana to find their way into other Shastras. They may not be into full-time studying Vyakarana. There is a limited availability of both time and effort because they're usually professionals who are doing something else for their livelihood, and they're not at that the agama age, the initial age of a student. So we will forget the right side for now because that is not the profile I am addressing. As a teacher, as a part of my job of teaching Vyakarana through Vyoma Samskata Pathashala, this is the major kind of profile of learners we are looking at. And those are also the people who need a functional language of the knowledge of Vyakarana, Shastra, as a meta discipline, as a foundation of their study for the other Shastras. So as a teacher, teaching Vyakarana Shastra to this profile of audience, there are challenges in two levels: what to teach and how to teach, which can result in an effective knowledge of Vyakarana, which can assist other studies. Right? So keeping in mind that they are not going full-time into a specialized study of Vyakarana, understanding that there are some limitations, many limitations actually on the time, age, other stuff, without overwhelming or creating a fear of Vyakarana, which is very valid. Just like maths is a dreaded subject in general studies, Vyakarana is a dreaded fear for many Sanskrit learners. How to overcome that, how to make them approach the subject in an easier way, how to communicate the essence and basic functional framework of the Shastra without delving too deep, which is not essential, right? And creating in them the competence to study further, either if they want to shift into Vyakarana as a specialization or go on to other Shastras with this background knowledge. How to do all this is a challenge which I have faced personally as a teacher. And it's a learning experience with every round of teaching, every kind of student I meet. These challenges are seen. So the objective of this talk today is to address this what and how. Right? When I'm thinking about what to teach, what we have tried to do is analyze three texts, primers of Vyakarana, which have been designed to condense or extract sections of sutras. It is not for complete understanding of the Aṣtādhyāyī. There have been several attempts to condense it for the purpose of teaching it to beginners or such people. So there are three texts authored by three different authors. So can we take a look at these texts and what are the insights that are derived from this analysis, which may help arrive at a core set of sutras. So there are 4,000 sutras in the Aṣtādhyāyī. Can we arrive at a common subset which will help to understand the basics easily with a lesser time for the students, which can be customized, of course, by each teacher, specific to, I keep telling this because this talk is in no way directed at the in-depth study of Vyakarana as a Shastra. Right? This is purely for the other profile. The adhikari and prayojana should always be very clear, right, for any teaching effort or the study of Shastras. And lastly, whenever we try to do this, right, the moment we disrupt the structure of the Aṣtādhyāyī, we try to extract something, condense it, the Aṣtādhyāyī structure is such that there are problems which happen. There are disadvantages. You cannot simply take some sutra out of the Aṣtādhyāyī and make sense of it because it is constructed that way in a particular flow with a particular order and intent by Maharshi Pāṇini. So how to overcome the essential disadvantages and problems which naturally arise when we disrupt the structure of the Aṣtādhyāyī. So that is the objective of this talk. So this thought of having to condense or extract the basic sutras from the Aṣtādhyāyī is not a new problem. right? So since more than a millennia, there have been scholars, mainly teachers of Vyakarana, who have tried to achieve this. We see the texts. The earliest known text right now is probably the Rupavatara of Dharmakirti, which was composed around 10th or 11th century CE, where we see the initial attempt, right? In around, he has reduced the number of sutras to around half of it to try and convey the essence of Vyakarana. There have been several we see over time, right till the latest, the 20th century. In 1911, Rajaraja Varma has published a book called Laghu-Pāṇiniyam, in which again he has taken an extract of around 1800 sutras to convey the essence of Vyakarana. The most famous of these attempts is, of course, the one by Varadaraja, who was a student of Bhattoji Dikshita, and his Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi. This is probably, or this is the text we find whenever there are universities or institutions who are trying to teach Vyakarana to assist as an Upakaraka or an Upaya Shastra. This is the text which is usually prescribed. Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi by Varadaraja with around 1300 sutras. So if we look at any universities, say the Central Sanskrit University or the National Sanskrit University, where the main specialization is, say, Sahitya or Vedanta, they have a compulsory Vyakarana paper. It is essential. The text there is usually the Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi. Okay. Again, in Vedanta, we find that the Arshavidya Gurukulam by Pujya Swamiji. So they have their 3-year Vedanta course. It has the Laghu Kaumudi as a compulsory text, because over time it has been accepted as a reasonable collection of sutras with which the students are expected to be equipped. But there are also questions raised. As I said, there are some problems with the Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi. Now the question would be, is that a problem of content, that is the what of it, or is it a problem of how it is taught, the methodology of teaching? So this is why is my question actually, because I'm constantly in touch with this subject and we keep hearing, these arguments against the method, for the method. So what is it? Is there a problem with the content? Are the sutras selected by Laghu Kaumudi appropriate? That was one question which I was trying to answer with this analysis. So what I tried to do was select 3 texts across a span of 1000 years. Say the earliest one, Laghu Kaumudi, is there. The earliest attempt was Rupavatara, and the latest, one of the latest. There have been other attempts in the 20th century, but Laghu-Pāṇiniyam is one novel attempt, which though it is not taught much, okay, it hasn't gained popularity, but it is actually a very well constructed and well respected text among those who know. So these 3 texts, 3 different authors, all of them were teachers, who were trying different combinations on how to teach. Rajaraja Varma, in his preface, he tells very clearly his purpose is to teach that set of students, the profile of which we have already seen. So in these 3 texts, what I have analyzed is to compare the sutras which have been selected by these and see what is the common. How much is common, how much is different. Okay. So when I looked at these, comparing the sutras, we find that there are about 1000 sutras of the 4000, roughly 25%, which have been taken by all the 3 authors. Right? And there are about 760 sutras which appear in at least 2 of these 3 primer texts. So why, as in, does that mean that this red section, that is sutras which have been completely ignored by all 3, which is 1300, or which has been selected in only one text, it in no way means that they are not relevant or unimportant sutras. That is not the purpose. Vyakarana is built on a premise of general rules and specific rules. There are lots of exceptions, specific words, specific rules, especially when we go to sections like Tadhita Pratyayas. There are like series of sutras which are used for 1 or 2 words or a few words. Okay, they are all specifics. There is not much to understand in those sutras. You need to know that this is a sutra, therefore this form is such or this pratyaya is such. Right? So it is only that for as a general sutra, to understand the general framework of grammar, this 1000 plus 750, if we put together, it comes to around 45% of the sutras. So these are the core of the Aṣtādhyāyī, the general framework of all prakaranas. Again, if we have a doubt, do they really represent all the prakaranas or is it like partial, this one? So if we look at chapter wise distribution also, we find that all the chapters have been represented. See, there are 8 chapters. So the green one is those sutras which are included in at least 2 texts, and the percentage of the sutras which have been covered. Right. So in the first chapter, nearly 75% sutras are explained. Right, and so on. Right. So there is representation across prakaranas and a reasonable amount of sutras, right? More than 40% in most of the chapters, except you can see here, right? 4, 5, and 6. And there is a very good reason. 4 and 5, as I said, are mostly tadhita pratyayas, which are extremely numerous and which are just generating few words. They are not the general framework sutras. In the 6th chapter, there are lots of sutras which are related to Vaidika Prakriya and Swara Prakriya. Pāṇini and Vyakarana addresses both comprehensively. So those sutras, when we are not targeting a study of Vaidika text, they are usually left out. But other than that, the first chapter especially, which has the Samya, Paribhasha, the technical terms, the basic framework of the Aṣtādhyāyī, and the 7th chapter, which is Anga Karyas, that is how exactly do we get the usable Subanta and Tinganta, that is nominal and verbal forms. So those are covered in great detail. So this is what we find about the content, which is good. That is what we would like to teach for these kind of, this profile of learners. Okay. And one more thing we get, there are several, aspects from which we try to analyze these 3 texts. Which are the most important padas or sections of the Aṣtādhyāyī, which are covered in these primer texts. Okay, so this is an area graph. So the yellow represents the total number. The green is the area which is covered. We see certain peaks, right, where there is a high coverage, right? We see that this is the 1, 1, 1, 3, 1, 4. That is a major first chapter. 2, 3, which is vibhakti, very, very essential for sentence construction, right? And 3, 1, the major pratyayas on the dhatus, and as I said, the angadhikara. Right? So how does this help? One of the major problems in teaching Vyakarana. So when Vyakarana is a specialization, actually traditionally we start with the Aṣtādhyāyī, memorize the whole of Aṣtādhyāyī first, and then embark on a study. This is extremely helpful and essential for the specialists, but for others also, they need to understand the importance of the Aṣtādhyāyī krama, the structure and all, right? For them, at least these sutras can be focused for memorization or repeated parayana at least, right? So that they understand the flow, the importance of sutra krama and so on. Right? At least this much of coverage which we can give to this profile, it will help in multiple ways. One is, of course, it helps in understanding the Aṣtādhyāyī. The second one, it helps in bridging the major problem with the reordering. Whenever I say the Laghu Kaumudi or any other kind of reordering, as I mentioned earlier, the problem is that we are leaving behind the Aṣtādhyāyī. And if they are delinked from the Aṣtādhyāyī, it is a huge problem because they are crippled by the missing links or the gaps. Focusing on at least some padas, the crucial padas, helps in a very big way in bridging this gap. Okay. So what we are trying to do through this method is to try to empower the learners to fill the gaps by themselves. It is accepted that there are gaps. They are not studying the entire Aṣtādhyāyī, but how to bridge the gaps? One is by understanding the layout or the floor plan as such of the Aṣtādhyāyī. Each chapter has a very specific focus. Pāṇini does not scatter sutras across. He is talking about samasa. He puts everything about that samasa formation in, say, 2 padas. If he is talking about Samya, he puts everything together. So understanding the major focus of each chapter, and further on, Prakarana organization at the pada level. So all the focus now, the what is decided. How, when we are talking about the how, the key factor, it seems, right, from the teaching experience is to link it to the Aṣtādhyāyī in a way which it will help. Say a learner, he knows the basic framework. He sees that, say, there is Ramayana, right? There is an akara on that. And if he sees a word like, say, Ramanathaha, you have the same Rama, you have Repha. So there should be an akara, but there is no nakara. He wants to know. He should have the general idea of where to look for. These days, we have lots of resources on which we can learn Vyakarana, even sutras if we have not studied. If you know the basic framework, it is possible to understand. But where to look? Natva Prakarana is localized in, say, about 39 sutras of 8.4. So if that much of basic understanding is there, right, it is always possible to find answers. As and when they read Vyakyanas or Bhashyas of other Shastras, whenever we do, say we read Raghuvamsha with Mallinatha quotes some sutra. If we can just look at the sutra, the location in the Aṣtādhyāyī, and know what it basically is, even if it is not really learned, it is a huge help, right? So at any point, being aware of the location of the Aṣtādhyāyī, being aware that there are gaps and how to fill is very helpful. And this is the key change needed in the approach, the how of it, to effectively communicate Vyakarana as an Upaya Shastra, right? So there is one more small slide I had, but in the interest of time, I'm skipping this. This is again very simple. So wherever there are sutras together in Aṣtādhyāyī, but as split over several prakaranas in a Prakriya text, it is important to go and understand the order of the Aṣtādhyāyī. Right? So all this is again an analysis of the 3 texts, where we see that there is a continuous section which is covered in all 3, but in a different order. It should always be a pointer that go back to the Aṣtādhyāyī and see how Pāṇini has structured that section so that we understand the essence of the Aṣtādhyāyī. Okay. So to sum up, Pāṇini and Vyakarana is an extremely versatile Shastra with extraordinary depth and width. Okay. Very honestly, having studied Vyakarana for over 20 years, even today, every day, there is some revelation which does not cease to amaze how much he has thought, how he has structured it. Okay. But when you're studying it, it can be designed differently when studied as an Upakaraka or an Upaya Shastra, a meta-discipline, rather than as a specialization. It can be abridged to focus on the core sutras and framework, but always retaining the anchoring to the Aṣtādhyāyī, which is crucial to make that study successful. All cases where, getting confused by the condensed text or the primer is mostly due to this loss of the linking with the original Aṣtādhyāyī. Okay. So it's a balancing act, especially for a teacher. I just wanted to share that. On one side, we have Pāṇiniyam Mahashastram Pada Sadhutva Lakshanam Sarvopakarakam. It is useful for all. Grahyam Kritsnam. So the shloka says it should be completely grasped. Tyajyam Nakinchana. Not one sutra of it can actually be removed. Right? That is true. When we are looking at the comprehensive outlook, this is 100% true. But on the other side, we have Anantaparam kila Shabda Shastram. So the Panchatantra, very famous shloka, it says Shabda Shastra is Ananta and Apara. If you go look at the text, it is endless. If you look at the depth also, it is endless. Swalpam tathayur bahavascha vignaha. Age or our lifespan is limited and there are so many obstacles. Saram tato grahyam. We need to get the essence out of it. This is again Panchatantra, by most conservative estimates, is 2000 years old minimum. So then only they were thinking, okay, Vyakarana has become too big. How do we get the Sara out of it? So trying to balance this is something which is an attempt which is done daily. And there are, as a teacher, every course is an experience, and we need to find ways on, making it better. So thanks very much to the Indica Center for Bharatiya Languages for giving me an opportunity to present some of the thoughts on this. Of course, any word of it, even one sentence I speak, is entirely due to the grace of my Guru Parampara, teachers who have taught so much without expecting anything in return. To Vyoma, which is my mother organization, the only place which allows me to teach whatever I want, with so many exposure to so many students and teaching, which helps me in improving each day. And of course, to a very important tool for Vyakarana, the Aṣtādhyāyī.com website built by Sri Nilesh Bodas, which actually makes possible these kinds of analysis, getting the extract of sutras, seeing what is common, making sutras so accessible. So deeply grateful to all of you. Dhanyavada.
Thank you, Samya ji. The presentation concluded with this fitting image of the harmony that was seen throughout in addressing modern day dilemmas about presenting such an intricate discipline to IKS explorers, which seems to have precedents from millennia ago as well. Thank you so much. Since we don't have questions posted, I will take this opportunity to invite our next speaker. It's my honor to invite Mahamahopadhyaya Dr. Korada Subramanyam ji, who is Professor of Sanskrit, retired from the University of Hyderabad, and Adjunct Professor in the Department of Heritage, Science and Technology at IIT Hyderabad. Mahamahopadhyaya Korada Subramanyam, born 1954, is a Sanskrit grammarian and scholar from India. He retired as a professor of Sanskrit at the Center for Applied Linguistics and Translation Studies, University of Hyderabad. Professor Korada Subramanyam was born into a family of Vedic scholars hailing from the Godavari Delta region, known as Konasima. His areas of expertise include the Aṣtādhyāyī, philosophy of language and translation. He is also well-versed in the Mahabhashya, Vakyapadiya, Laghu Manjusha, Shloka Vartikam, and Tantra Vartikam. He is the author of the rare book, Theories of Language, Oriental and Occidental. To know more about Dr. Subramanyam, you can visit his blog link posted in the chat. He continues to serve the cause of knowledge even after his retirement in various ways, including teaching both at his home, Griha Gurukula, and also currently as an adjunct professor in the Department of Heritage, Science and Technology, IIT Hyderabad. Today, he'll be speaking on Vyakarana vis-a-vis Nyaya, Mimamsa, and Sahitya Shastras. Over to you, Mahamahopadhyaya.
Om Namah Pāṇini and Nirukta Shabda Vidya Sampradaya Kartabhyo Vanchirabhyo Paramarabhyo Mahadhyo Manibhyo Gurubhya. At the outset, let me explain. The topic I have given is actually very condensed. In this sense, Vyakarana, its Prabhava on Nyaya, Mimamsa, and Alankar Shastras, just I have given because I have to limit my talk to the time that is given to me. Otherwise, Vyakaranam is a fundamental discipline for any Vidya. To learn anything, Vyakaranam is essential. It is clearly stated even in Dhanyaloka, Vyakaranam Molatvat Sarva Shabdanam. So, Vidya Sarva Vidyanam. So, any Vidya, even there, if you people may discuss generally only Nyaya or Mimamsa, etc. But Pāṇini earmarked at least 50 sutras for Jyotisham. Jyotisham is considered as both the eyes of Veda Purusha. Jyotisham, Ayanam, Chakshuhu, and so on. So, even in Natya Shastra, we are going to touch Alankar Shastra anyway. And Pāṇini has earmarked some sutras for Ayurveda. So on and so forth. So, for any Vidyasthanam, this Vyakaranam is essential. Without Vyakarana, nothing moves. Because Shabda and Artha, Kajata explains, Padarthamolatvat Vakyartha. So first you should know what is Padam. Then it's Artha. Then a combination of other arthas would emerge that is called Vakyartha. So here, just one or 2 points. Atha Shabda Anushasanam. The term Shabda is translated as a word. Even if you put W in capital, it is wrong. Shabda is Shabda only. We have to adapt the term rather than try for rendering. Because Shabda can be Varnaha, Prakrutihi, Pratyaha, Padam, Avantarvakyam, Mahavakyam, Para Pashyanti, Madhyama Vaikhari, Shabda Pramanam, Dhvani. All these meanings, at least 14 or 15 meanings are there for the term. So that is loaded with meaning, it is pregnant with meaning. So it is better, Atha Shabdanushāsanam is hereafter we are going to study the Shastra or science of Shabda rather than a word. Okay. And even grammar is a rough translation. Some translation or the other has to be offered for the people who are not from this culture. Okay, so something similarity is there because Vyakarana includes grammar. And grammar is not Vyakaranam. Vyakaranam means Vyakriyante, Avashaddebhyaha, Sadhu Shabdaha, Prathakriyante, Aneneti Vyakaranam. Vyakaranam is an instrument whereby one can separate the Shabdas or Sadhu Shabdas from Asadhu Shabdas. Here language is associated with philosophy. Language has got 2 purposes here. One is transformation of meaning, just that is any language is doing. The second one is dharma. Siddhe Shabdartha Sambandhe, Lokataha Artha Prayukte Shabda Prayoge, Shastrena Dharmaniyamah Kriyate, Yatha Laukika Vaidikeshu. That is the first Vartikam. So Pāṇini is not a Srashta of Shabdas. He is a Smarta of Shabdas. Okay. So here what happens is Shabda. One more thing is generally Pāṇini is described in most of the Westerners' books that it discusses Padam or it discusses Vakyam. In fact, Pāṇini discusses right from Varna down to Mahavakyam. Mahavakyam we are going to discuss. So I am like that the Varna Mala is given rather in Maheshwar Sutras. Okay, and then he goes on to Pada. Pada is generally translated word. Then he goes to Karakam, Vakyam. Then he goes to Mahavakyam, Vibhasha Sakankshe Nayati. Some sutras are there in Atthādhyāyī, but most of the people did not discuss these things, Mahavakyam. Okay, Mahavakyam and Mahakavyam both are one and the same. We are going to touch the point. Okay, so now, if at all one wants to study Sanskritam or any Shastram, select a guru who studied Pada Vakya Pramana Shastras. Pada Shastram, Vyakaranam, Vakya Shastram, Mimamsa, and Pramana Shastra, Nyaya Vaiseshike. And here, Pradhanyena Vyapadeshaha Bhavanti. The king won the war. Although the king did not participate in direct action in the war, although the soldiers who were representing him fought the war, the name goes to the king. So, Pradhanyena Vyapadeshaha Bhavanti. Although Varna, Pada, Vakya, Mahavakya, etc. are discussed by Pāṇini, it is padam that is mainly discussed by Vyakarana. Suptingantam padam defined and discussed. Therefore, it is called Padashastram. That does not mean that Vyakarana doesn't discuss Vakyam and Mahavakyam. Same is the case with Mimamsa. Mimamsa also Vakyam is defined. Arthayatvad ekam Vakyam, I am going to touch, etc. Defined and discussed. So Vakyam is mainly discussed. That does not mean that Varna or Pada or Mahavakya are not discussed by Mimamsa. Same is the case with Nyaya Vaisheshikas. There also Pramanas are mainly discussed, and on the side of it, the Varna, Padam, Vakyam, Akanksha, Yogyata, Asati, Yukta, Eva, we have come in Tarka Sangraha. All those things, including Mahavakyam, we are going to touch the point. So, now Vyakaranam is a meta language in the sense it is essential. It is a fundamental science. If at all one wants to study any Shastra, any Kavya, any piece of literature for that matter, there also it is Vaidika as well as Laukika. Okay, Laukika, ya eva Laukika Shabdaha, ta eva Vaidikaha, ta eva Tesham Arthaha. This is from Akrityadhikaranam of Purvamimamsa. So whichever Shabdas are there in Loka, the same are there in Veda. The same are the meanings. There is no any difference. Then Bhadranganne Vishnuyama Devaha. Kannevihi you are saying, Karnahi is here, Devasaha, Prajasaha. So in the form of some Shabdas, there is a difference between Laukika Shabda and Vaidika Shabda. That is, Pāṇini says, Vyachayo Bahulam, Pansotram, Varna Vyachayaha, Vibhakti Vyachayaha. Patañjali goes on giving the examples and explaining the sutra. And at least 12 to 13 times the sutram Bahulam Chandasi recovers across Aṣtādhyāyī. One more thing is here in Brahajjatakam, Mihiracharya says these Vyakaranas, Mīmāsakas, Naiyayikas, Vedantins, all of them miserably failed in the study of Hora Shastra, that is Jataka Skandha. Hora Tantra Mahannava Pratarane Bhagnodhyamana Vidam. They have seen the Shastras time and again, time and again. No doubt they are the best scholars in their Shastras, but they miserably failed in understanding and studying the Jyotisham, especially the Jataka Skandha. Muhurta Skandha, Jataka Skandha, Siddhanta Skandha, 3 skandhas are there in Jyotisham. I have studied at least 2,000 horoscopes between 1977 and 1994. Okay, so study involves offering predictions. Okay, why Pāṇini was killed by a lion, Rahu was the marka, something like that, you will be in a position. And also Pāṇini says one thing which is not discussed much. Radhikshyor yasyava prashnaha. People had many questions and they were running to the astrologers, Siddhantis, okay, to know as to what is in store for them with their horoscopes. So Pāṇini was closely watching as to what is happening in the world. Anyway, let us come back to, since the time is very short, let us come back to the main topic, the influence of Vyakaranam. Here it is Pāṇini only, because it is the only Vyakaranam that can be called Vedāṅga. Other Vyakaranas, Saindran, Chandran, Kasik, those Vyakaranas are not Vedāṅgas. Only Pāṇini is Vedāṅga, because it discusses Vedic Shabdas also, this Swara, etc. Just one example we can give. He says, Shrotriyam Chando Dhite, in the sense Vakyarthe Padavachanam, Mahabhashyam. So, Chandaha Adhite, regularly he is reciting Veda, he is called Shrotriyaha. This is a Nipata. Vidhi and Nipata, in two fashions Pāṇini offers the Shabdas. Vidhi is Prakriti and Prachaya Vibhaga. Separately, they are given Kru Dhatu, Tavya Prachaya, Kartavyam, Aniya Prachaya, Karaniyam, and Shaprachaya Kriya, so on and so forth, Karoti, etc. Okay, that is one thing. Second thing is he offers a Nipata. Nipata means offering a ready-made word that is fit for usage. And one has to extract or separate the Prakriti and Prachaya from the Shabda given. Shrotriyam Chando Dhite. Shrotriyan Ni is for Swara, Nityadi Nityam. Okay. The Shruti plus Ghan Prachaya. Shrotriyaha means a person who regularly recites Veda. This Shabda is taken from Taittiriya Upanishad. Shrotriyasya Jagama Hatasya, etc. Another example is Kshetriyach Parakshetre Chikitsyaha. This person this disease rather has to be treated in another body. Parakshetre Śikṣā. See the way he speaks. See, in Ayurveda, you have three kinds of diseases. One is Sadhya, the other is Kashtasadhya or Yapya, third one is Asadhya. What Pāṇini means is Asadhya. This term is used in Atharva Veda. At once with his yoga projection, Pāṇini was able to see, perceive 1130 branches of Veda. Today we have only hardly 12 or 13 branches. So, Kshetriya Chitaha Antudata Swaraha is the Prayojanam. So, Kshetriya is a Shabda that can be employed in the sense of Parakshetriya Śikṣā, a disease that is incurable. Asadhya rogas are there. For example, popular roga is Madhumeha. Okay. So, like that, Pāṇini offers Shabdas in two fashions. Now, you said that Pāṇini's Vyakaranam has influence upon Vakya Shastra. That is Mimamsa. How? Here, Shabda is Nitya. See, certain things or Siddhantas which we are discussing are not stated by Sotrakara, Pāṇini, because it is not his job. His job is simply start Vridhiradaich. That's all. End of the matter. He goes home. He may offer, some people say he offered examples, counter examples, etc. Some people say no. It was the job of the later people who have come later. For example, Katyayana, Bhartṛhari, etc. And Patañjali in Mahabhashyam, the great Sholiam. Bhashyam means Sholiam. Vyakarana means commentary. That is the difference. Now, Pāṇini offered a definition of a padam, Suptingantam padam, Subantam Tingantam. He took only two kinds of padas. The earlier Namakhyatopasarkanipatascha and fourfold division of Shabdas was there. Some people said these fivefold and all that. But he said only under two headings I am going to put the gamut of Shabdas. Right? Then, when we go to Mimamsa, what happens? Mimamsa is Vakya Shastra. What is the actual job of Mimamsa? There are two kinds of Mimamsas. Total 20 chapters. Okay, 12 chapters. Dvadasha Lakshani it is called, is Purva Mimamsa. 4 Adhyayas is Uttara Mimamsa or Vedāṅga. And the other 4 Vedas deal with Bhakti, that kind of these things. So here, Purva Mimamsa, the word Purva refers to earlier parts of Veda. That is the Samhita Bhaga, of course. So, and it discusses Asato Dharma Jignasa first Sutram. So it discusses karma, yajna, yaga, and all kinds of details that are discussed in Purva Mimamsa. Uttara Mimamsa, the Uttara, the term refers to latter parts of Veda called Upanishads. That is, that deals with Jnana. Now, in Uttara Mimamsa, we do not have any kind of specific subject or no concepts are discussed. All the concepts are taken from Purva Mimamsa only. That means Vakya, Vakya Veda, all other things, Arthavada, whatever is there, that is borrowed by Purva Mimamsa. So Uttara Mimamsa doesn't separately have any kind of linguistic analysis in terms of Vakyartha. Now, so mostly in Vedanta, it is Vyavahare Bhattanayaha. Bhattamatam, Prabhakaramatam, two are there. We are not going into details, but mostly Bhattamatam is taken by this Vedantis. Here in Purva Mimamsa, Mimamsa Sutras are authored by Jaimini Maharshi. He authored Jyotisham, Sutras for Jyotisham also. Many people may not be knowing. Let's say, keep it aside. So here, Arthaigatvad ekam vakyam sakankshantched vibhage syat. What is a vakyam? Actually, it is in Yajuh Parimanadhikarana. Yajuh means vakyam. It is a Vedic terminology. Yajur Veda means a Veda of sentences. Okay, then what is a Yajuh? Instead of saying Yajuh in the Sotram, he says vakyam. Because vakyam and Yajuh are just synonyms. Now, Arthaigatvat ekam vakyam sakankshantched vibhage syat. if and only if a single meaning, unitary meaning, is denoted by a group of words or group of sentences. He doesn't say whether it is pada or avantara vakya, because vakya is of two types, vakyam and mahavakyam. If the meaning to be denoted is short, we employ a sentence. If the meaning is too lengthy, we employ more than two sentences. Okay, for example, Ramayanam is a mahavakyam. Mahakavyam, mahavakyam, both are one and the same. So here in the sutra, arthaikatvat ekam vakyam sakankshan chet vibhage syat, Jaimini doesn't insert the word padam or vakyam. He simply says, if a single meaning or purpose is served or meaning is denoted and then separated, if the parts are found to be wanting, that means if you find akanksha, then it is a vakyam. That is what he says. So this, in my thesis Mahavakya Vicharaha, available on internet, online, I have discussed extensively this. So this is a definition of both vakyam and mahavakyam. So purposefully, Jaimini did not insert the term padam, because it will become the definition of padam only, but not vakyam. Now let us visit Pāṇini in third Adhyaya, Vibhāṣā Sākaṅkshe Svarasya Krishna yat Kashmireshu Vatsyamaha tatra Saktun Pasyamaha. Svarasya Krishna yat Kashmireshu Avasana tatra Saktun Abhivama. So the Nirukta either can be used as lakara in that sense. So what Pāṇini says, Vibhāṣā Sākaṅkshe Asti Akanksha Asminiti Sākaṅksham Mahabharshim. So there is akanksha in both the sentences, then it will become a mahavakyam. Okay? And here what is meant by Pāṇini is sakanksam. The term is meaningful. The same term sakanksam we find in Mimamsa also. So for a mahavakyam, both Pāṇini and Jaimini offer definitions, in other words. Because akanksha is the minimum thing. Expectancy, that is mutual expectancy. Chaitraha, simply, Chaitraha is good. Then question will be, Chaitraha kinkaroti, what Chaitra is doing? The akanksha is for a kriya shabda. There are only two shabdas, nama and kriya. So pachati, only pachati is employed. Then he says, question will be, who is pachati? Kaha? Kaf pachati? Chaitra pachati. So there is akanksha between the two words. Yogyata and Sannidhi, I am not discussing for the sake of time. Yogyata will continuously will be there. Akanksha will be put to rest by supplying the other word. And Sannidhi is the proximity of Shabdas by pronouncing a sentence. Okay, so in both the Shastras, since Pāṇini said akanksha in Mahavakya, there Jaimini says Sakanksam chet vibhage syat. Vibhage sakanksam chet ekam vakyam. Ekavakyata, ekartha bodhakatvam. Okay, or the one sentence-ness roughly. Let us coin a word. So a single meaning is denoted at that level. But Pāṇini does not offer a definition of a vakyam. Okay. Nor Jaimini offers a definition of a pada. If you go across the Shastras, very interesting. Then, according to Vyakarana, it is akhanda vakya jati sphata is the siddhanta. The very unit of language. What is the meaning of very unit? Through sentence only, vakyam only, you can transform meaning, but not through pada, etc. Then where are you coming from? Hostel. Hostel is a padam? No. Hostel is not a padam. Hostel is an elliptical sentence, incomplete sentence. I am coming from or the ellipses to be added. Since there is shared knowledge, the other words are not employed by the person. Simply said hostel. So it is vakyam only, but artificially, apodhara padarthaye yecharthaha sthita verse number 44, Brahmakanda Vakyapadiyam. So Vakyapadiyam says, Pade navanna vidyante Vaneshvavayavanacha Vakyat Padanamattyantam Prabhiveko Nakaschana. Clearly stated. Actually, Pāṇini has to compile a Vyakarana. What is Vyakarana? Science of language, roughly translation. Acha. Science of language. Language means there are a number of units in a language. There is Mahavakyam, discourse. There is Vakyam, Avantarvakyam, Padam, Prakriti, Pratyaya, Varna. Which one should Pāṇini take up? For analyzing the language, great language. One more thing before I forget. Whatever I have presented a paper in English and Foreign Languages, University, Hyderabad, in January. Mostly it will be published very quickly. I mean, soon it is going to be published. How to teach English. I was invited. There, I have authored an article, a paper, Universals of Language and Literature. Whatever we are discussing in Karka theory, or Mahavakya analysis, or semantics for that matter, all these things are useful for language per se. That is any language, not simply for Sanskrit. Pāṇini actually authored for Karkam, etc. for Sanskritam. But because that is the Daivi Bhasha, Arya Bhasha, Pāṇini doesn't mind, doesn't care about Mlecha Bhashas. Mlecha means aspashta, unclear. So whatever are there, we are going to discuss Abhidha, Lakshana, Vyanjana, or Tatparyam, or Mahavakyartha, Vakyartha, Padartha. All these things are applicable equally to other languages. Just one example. If you say cow, how many meanings are there? One meaning. That is wrong. The term, the word cow denotes 5 meanings. Jati, Vyakti, Linga, Sankhya, Karakam. 5 meanings are Panchakam Pratipadika, we call in Shastras. So, like to take any language and the meaning as well. London is on Thames, wrong. Lakshana, London is on the shores of banks of river Thames. Why do you say so? Because there will be Shaityam, coolness. In the case of Gangayam Ghosha, we have Pavanatvam also. 2 purposes. For that Vyangyartha, the sentence is employed like this. But people outside do not analyze the Shabda like that. The bus is coming. Wrong. Bus cannot come spontaneously in bracket. Annam, Pattam, Annam, Udikinda in Telugu, for example, for some languages. Who is cooked rice, cooked or not? True translation. Wrong. So, under Karmanidvitiya, Patañjali says, Tandula, Vadanartha, Tandulaha Vadanam. Vadanam Pachati. Vadanam means cooked rice. Pachati means cooking. Except for a person who is suffering from coma, we do not cook the cooked rice. But here the usage is like that. Then Patañjali indirectly says, Lakshana. Do not take Vadanam as the cooked rice. Do not do as it is. Do not translate like that. But Vadanartha, Tandulaha, the raw rice meant for cooking, are just said, denoted by the term Vadanam. That is Lakshana. Lakshana is actually, strictly speaking, in Manjusha, etc., these Vyakarana say Lakshana is not acceptable. But under Viyogadakhyayam, Patanjali says, Tadachya, Tascha, Tatsamipya, Tadharmya. There are 4 kinds of upayas he has given devices. Through that, Manchaha Santi, Gangayam Ghoshaha, such usages which are Simho Manavakaha. The boy is lion. Is it okay? The boy cannot become a lion. No. Then it means the gunas whichever are there in a lion are there in a Manavaka boy. So this is what is generally called Gauni Vrittihi in Mimamsa. The Sotram related, relevant Sotram in Mimamsa is Gunavadastu Gauna Ete Shabdaha Shaprabhashyam. That means do not take the meaning as it is. Sometimes you have to take the Lakshyartha or secondary meaning. So here the bus is coming means that does not mean that the bus is coming spontaneously. But the bus is coming as if it is coming spontaneously. It is being driven. Okay, so this is Lakshana and Gauni, both are almost one and the same. Details you can have from Kavya Prakasha of Mamatacharya. But Gauni is when there is a comparison. Sadrishyam, then Gauni Vritti, otherwise Lakshana Vritti is employed. So here in Pāṇini, suppose if you ask me, where did Pāṇini refer to Lakshana Vritti? Take a sutram like 2-to-1. Second Adhyaya, second Pada, first sutram, Samarthah Pada Vidhihi. Pada Sambandhiyo Vidhihi Saha Samarthashitaha Bodhya. That is the Vritti. Okay, so Pada Vidhihi means not Padayo Vidhi, Pada Sambandhi Vidhihi. Because in Kridvritti, Karmanyan, Kumbhakaroti iti Kumbhakaraha, Kumbha Kru, and there you don't have both the padas. That's why Tatropapadam Saptami Stham. Pāṇini was saying Padam Upapadam. The Samya is to tell us that although you do not find two padas just like in a samasa, Rajna Purusha like that, Krudvritti also falls under Padavidhi. So the Vritti should be not Padayor Vidhi or Padana Vidhi, but Pada Sambandhiyo Vidhi. Saha Samarthaha. There also Lakshana. Samarthashitaha. Samarthyam, Ekarthi Bhava. That is all kinds of discussions will go on. Vyapeksha only is accepted by Nayayikas. And of course, in a sentence that is Vyapeksha. We are not going into the details right now. But this here itself, the seeds are there for Nayayikas also. You take Jati and Vyakti. You cannot go without Jati and Vyakti. Let us take an example from English. Do not kill a cow. Oh, okay. I shall not kill a cow. I shall keep a cow separate and then go on killing all the cows on earth. Or I shall ask Mr. Kilmore, who wants a job, to go on killing all the cows except one. Is it okay? No. Here a cow means all the cows, any cow. I see. So a cow means any cow, all cows. Accepted. Fetch a cow. A cow means all the cows. One is supposed to fetch. The orderly has to fetch all the cows that are available on earth. Is it so? No. Here it is. A cow means a single cow. Vyakti. It is not class. It is not jati. Do not kill a cow. It is jati, class. Fetch a cow. It is vyakti. That is only one cow. So the secret is that the actual situation is that Jati is denoted by Tava or Tal, either one of the pratyayas. Tasya bhavas tatalo Pāṇini Sutram. Fourth Adhyaya. So, Goho bhavaha gotvam. Gota. Striyatvam striyata. Purushatvam purushata. Prakshatvam prakshata. Jati is the avachadika dharma which separates one thing from the rest of the things in the world. Or you may say, roughly, the nucleic acid. How to decide whether both of them belong to the same mother or not? Okay, the test is done, roughly. Now, if at all you take a Vyakti, for example, Go Vyakti, an individual cow, you will find it associated with Gotva Jati. Without Gotva Jati, there cannot be Go Vyakti. If at all you want to show someone the Gotva Go Vyakti, then automatically Gotva Jati will be there, and Gotva Jati can be found in Go Vyakti only. So, here it is called Nantari Ekatvam. Under Bhave, third Adhyaya Sutram, Patanjali explains. So, Jati Vyakyoho Nantari Ekatvam. This is generally called Samavaya Sambandha by Nayayikas. Okay, even for Vyakaranas, for example, between Shabda and Artha, it is Samvaya Sambandha only. So here, Pāṇini says, Jatyachayam ekasmin bahochanam anyatarasyam. He says, Jati is the meaning of a Shabda. Whereas he gives another rule, Sarupanam ekaseshaha ekavibhaktau. Rama, Ramo, Rama, etc. So there he says, a Shabda would denote a Vyakti. So whether to take Jati Paksha or Vyakti Paksha, both of them have to be taken. Both of them are taken by Pāṇini to run the Shastram Aṣtādhyāyī complete. That is one thing. Then what about Mīmāṅsa? In Mīmāṅsa, Ākrityadhikaranam, Ākritih Kriyārthatvat. There, Jaimini says, Akriti, Jati, both are one and the same. Jati meva Akritim Prahu, Vyaktira Kriyate Yaya. This is from Shlokavartikam of Kumarala Bhatta. Sure. Here, Akritihi Kriyārthatvat. What is the Kriya? Yaga Kriya. Yaga Kriya is to be performed in Gotha Jati only. Is it okay, the meaning of this sutram? How are you just giving such kind of sutram? Being a Rishi? No. There is nothing wrong. See, there is one thing, Go Vyakti. 4 kinds of Shabdas are Jati, Guna, Kriya, Samya. All the 4, Jati and Guna, Kriya, and all these 4 have got a Vyakti. For example, Gau. For example, Ramaha, Chaitraha, Maitreyi, like that. All of them are just like abstract nouns, they are called in philosophy. All of them have got a Vyakti as a result. There is a blackboard. Can you separate the Guna blackness from the board? No, you cannot. You cannot see or show. Therefore, here, the Gotha Jati, this is at a certain length. If you go deeper in Patakanda Jati Samuddesha, Bhartṛhari brings in other Shastras. Vakyapadiam itself means you should know Bauddha, Jaina, Charvaka, all these just systems of different subsystems of Indian philosophy. Otherwise, you do not understand, you cannot teach Vakyapadiam. I have translated Brahmakanda only. Now, he says, Sambandhi Bhedat Sattaiva Jati Rityuchyate Vadhaihi. Sambandhi Bhedat Sattaiva Jati Rityuchyate Vadhaihi. Sanitya. Here, Satyan Sarve Shabda Vyavasthita. In Jati only all the Shabdas are there. First it is Shabda Jati. Then it is Gotha Jati, Vrikshata Jati, Stritva Jati, like that. For Nayayikas, Nisamanyani, Samanyani. In one Jati, you Samanyam, Jati, both are one and the same, synonyms. In one, Jati, Jatancha, Samanyam, Amarakosha. So, in one Samanya, in one Jati, you cannot have another Jati for Nayayikas. Whereas for Vyakaranas, in Shabdatva Jati is there first, then in that, Gotha Jati, Stritva Jati, Vrikshata Jati, etc. will be there. Sambandhi Bhedat Sattaiva Vidyamana Gavadishu. See, if you take Sambandhi means Dravyam. Dravya Bheda, if you take so many cows, this is clear in the Paspashanikam beginning itself. Yes, that Chinneshvachinnam, Bhinneshvavinnam, Samanya Bhutam Sashabda, Patanjali questions. So, like that in different Go Vyaktis, you will find one phenomenon common, that is Jati, Gotha Jati. Jati Rityuchyate Tasyam Sarve Shabdam Vyavasthitaha Tampratipratikarthancha Dhātupāṭha Pratyakshate Sanitya Samahan Atma Tamahut Taladayaha. What Pāṇini says, Pratipratikartha, Nya Pratipratikarth, he says. And what is said by Pāṇini in Dhātoho Adhikara, Dhātoho, Pratyaya, Parascha, Adyada, Tasya, etc. Sutras in 3rd Adhyaya. Okay, so either Pratipratikartha or Dhātvartha is nothing but Jati only. That means the term Bhava in Tasya Bhavastatalo or Bhave in Tasya Bhavastatalo is in Tadhita. Bhave is in Kridanta, Prakriya. So Bhava in both the cases means nothing but Jati only. Then he brings in other Shastras. Very beautiful. Tampratipratikarthancha Dhātvarthancha Pratyakshate Sanitya. Nayayikas say Nitya, Prithvi Nitya, Akashan Nityam, Agni Nitya, etc. Panchabhutas are Nitya. Okay, nobody says Sanitya, but today we see all the Panchabhutas are Nitya only. deteriorating situation. If the manas is not kalushita, polluted, Panchabhutas, 5 elements are not kalushita, not polluted. Once the manas is kalushita, polluted, all the Panchabhutas are polluted. Whether you go for water, go for Agni, go for Vayu, anything. Leave it there. Sanitya, the same jati is called by the name Nityavayanayaikas. Sa Mahan, Sankhya say Mahan. Mahatattvam is very important for them. He is referring to Sankhya. Sanitya, Sa Mahan, Atma. So these Vedantins say Atma. Apnoti the Atma. Isn't it? Tasmadva etasmad atmana akasha sambhutaha. Akashad vayu ayoragni agne prithvi. This is from Taittiya Upanishad mantras. Okay, so whatever is called by the term bhava by Pāṇini is nothing but jati only. It is also called tattva, satta, and in niruktam there are shad bhava vikaras, 6 stages of a thing. Jayate, asti, viparinamate, vardhate, apakshiyate, vinashyati. Everything has to undergo all the 6 stages. All the 6 stages are nothing but different stages of satta only. Clearly said by, I am not quoting all the verses, for time considerations. Okay, in Vakyapadi. Now, so this any language you take, first of all, now come back to me, Master. There is it akrutihi kriyarthatvat. How can you perform a yaga kriya? Pashuna yajeta. One should perform the yaga with a male pashu. Pashu here, male pashu only. Sometimes linga is vivakshita, sometimes linga is not vivakshita. Here it is vivakshita. Male pashu only. You cannot perform a yaga with female pashu. No. Pashuna yajeta pashu. But it is a vyakti, we have to bring a pashu and then start performing the sacrifice, the yaga. How can you say akruti, which cannot be seen or shown? Then he says, no, not like that. Akruti, automatically, go is there. Go jati, gotva jati is the meaning. Okay, then this gotva jati cannot be seen or shown. Automatically, it refers to vyakti. Because nantriyika, jati and vyakti cannot be seen or shown separately. So, jati visishta vyakti, gotva jati visishta go vyakti has to be taken for the yaga. So, there are a number of verses by Kumara Bhatta. I am not quoting all of them because the lengthy discussion will be there on Alankar Shastra. So, now it is stated, just a couple of things only I have taken, not all. So, Mahavakya or Jati Vyakti or Gaunyartha, all these things, whichever are there in Vyakarana, are there in Mimamsa also. Nyaya Darshan. Just now we discussed Jati Vyakti. Jatyakruti Vyaktayastu Padarthaha. This is a sotram from 2nd Adhyaya of Nyaya Darshanam. Okay, finally, Akruti is replaced by Jati by people. Okay, and so Jati and Vyakti only 2 are taken. So Jatyavachchana Vyakti or Vyatyavachchana Jati will be the meaning of a Sharda. That is how Nayayikas go. That means there Jatyakhyayam is there, Akruti Kriyarthatvat is there in Mimamsa. Now Jatyakruti Vyaktayastu Padarthaha is there in Nyaya Darshan. So there is slight difference. Nyaya can be put under 2 headings. Prachina Nyaya and Navya Nyaya. In Prachina Nyaya, Akshapada Sutras are there. There is no any problem between Pāṇini Sutras and Akshapada Sutras. Here Pāṇini says Siptingantam Padam. There Akshapada says Te Vibhakyantah Padam. Vibhakti is of 2 types. One is Vibhakti, Su Ojas Amortius, etc. And then Ting Vibhakti. Ting also is a Vibhakti. That is Tiptasti, Siptastam, Vipasmas, etc. So Subantam and Tingantam, only 2 kinds of Shabdas are there. So Akshapada calls them Vibhakyante, Vibhakyantaha Padam. Padam in our Shastra, he is not defining. He is just endorsing whatever is said by Pāṇini. Now, if you go further, Shabda is Nitya according to Vyakaranas. and Mīmānsakas. Okay, Siddhe Shabdat Sambandhe, I have quoted Katyayana Svartikam because Pāṇini did not give any sotram to say that Shabda is Nitya. But through Vyākyanas, Vartikakara and Mahabhashyam, we understand all that. No. So Shabda is Nityaha Karyo Veti. In Paspashandikam, Patanjali discusses whether Shabda is Nitya or Karya. Karya means, for example, which is manufactured, which is made. For example, take a pot. There is clay, and a person, a kolala, would prepare a pot with the help of stick, water, etc. Whichever is Karya is going to perish. Shabdaha, Anityaha, Karyatvat, Ghatavat. This is what is there in Nyaya. Just like a pot, Shabda is made. Made means here, with the help of some speech organs, it is produced. So it is Anitya. Okay. Here also, when you take up the Shabda, generally it perishes. As soon as it is pronounced, each one of perishes. So Shabda is not there. But if you take Pāṇini Sutram, what is this? The Sama, Drushtam Sama, Vasisthena Drushtam, Vasishtham Sama, Taitriya, Vasishtha, Paipalada, etc. are there. These Shabdas are Nitya. The Vedas were pronounced and recited by Maharshis. They are still there in the universe, in Akasha. And the people, the Maharshis, would perform tapas. And through Yogi Pratyaksha, they will find that mantra. And that mantra is propagated in the Loka, spread in the Loka. Therefore, that mantra is named after Vasishtha, Taititri, Pipalada, etc. All the rishis. That is actually what is happening. Because Vedaha Apaurushaya, Vedas are not authored by anybody. There is no Karta just like Kalidasa or Shakuntalam. So this is clearly stated by Pāṇini and also by Jaimini. But when you say in this Nayayikas do not accept Apaurushayatva for Vedas, there is problem. Okay. Mantra Ayurveda Vachyata Pramanyam Apta Pramanyat. This is the sutram from Nyaya Darshanam. I think second Adhyaya. So mantra drashtarha, he says there. See, all the sense organs do all the karyas, all the what you call activities of the indriyas for Maharshis. So that is Yogi Pratyaksha. And Pāṇini also was so great. He was covering so many, more than 1,000 branches of Veda as well as Loka. There is Bhasha in Darshanas, Vedāṅgas, Puranas, Vaidyakam, Arthashastram, Upavedas, and all that. It was just like a puppet for him. It is so easy. Here Nayayikas say Shabdaha Anityaha. There is slight difference. And second thing is, when Pāṇini says Suptingantam Padam, Suvantam Tingantam Padam, if you ask the Nayayikas, they say Shaktam Padam. If you say whichever Shabda unit, whichever unit of Shabda, it may be a Prakriti or Pratyaya. If it has got a meaning, it can be taken as Shabda. Need not necessarily be Subantam or Tingantam. That is how it turns out. But there is problem. Then what happens? Prakriti and Pratyaya, which are assigned some meaning by Pāṇini, also would become Padas. The danger is there. Actually, this idea is not that of Nayayikas. Their mistake is considering that Prakriti and Pratyaya, each one also can be called a Padam. That is the mistake they have counted. But under Dhātha Bhada, Patanjali says, Padam, Sarve Sarvapadadesha Dakshi Putrasya Pāṇinehe. Dakshi's son, Pāṇini, takes up Eruhu Bhavati. Bhavati is replaced by Bhavatu. Do not think E is replaced by U, although he says Eruhu, Sutram. So,
Namaste, Meg here. I'm sorry I'm interrupting, but I'm just keeping track of the time. My apologies for interrupting. Yeah.
Okay. Shall I stop now?
We could close in a minute or two if you can just close the.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Dhanyaloka and what is that? Mamadacharya's Kavya Prakasha, you come across these statements that Sphatavada Vyakaranas is the base of Vyangyartha, Dhvani, and all that. Thank you very much for giving me the chance to Harikiran Garu, the Indic Academy, Megha, etc. for all the help. Namaste. Shubham Bhuyat.
Thank you so much, Professor. My unpleasant task of keeping time, and therefore I had to interrupt. But it was wonderful. Over to you, Arvind. Take it forward.
Thank you so much, Mahamahopadhyay, for this effortlessly encyclopedic coverage, which helped us see the links between things assumed as separate, especially this assumption of separation of Pada, Vakya, Pramana was so nicely demolished by you. We could say, speaking of the Pada relations, which both the Vyakaranas and Mimamsakas parallelly care about, and the Padartha relations, which both the Vyakaranas and Nayayikas care about. Thank you so much, Professor. It's now my pleasure to invite Dr. Sharda Narayanan, who is Assistant Professor, Department of Natya, Dr. MGR Janaki College of Arts and Science for Women at Chennai. Sharda Narayanan obtained PhD from JNU for her study of Vakyapadiya, which is part of Vyakarana Darshana. She completed MA in Sanskrit from Bangalore University, specializing in Sahitya, after an MSc in physics. Having begun Sanskrit studies from her school days, she has also completed Sahitya exams from Sri Chamarajendra Vodayar Sanskrit College in Bangalore. She has presented research papers in several national and international seminars and has a number of published papers to her credit. She has authored a number of books on diverse topics, including Shastra Deepika Tarkapada, which is a Mimamsa text, jointly with Mahamahopadhyay Dr. Mani Dravid Shastrigar, complete introduction and translation of Gita Govinda of Jayadeva with Dr. Sujata Mohan, and more recently, Thirumurai, glimpses into Tamil Shaiva poetry, along with Matanki Ratnavel. She is currently Assistant Professor in Natya Department in Dr. MGR College for Women, teaching Indian philosophy and aesthetics, and is also completing a project under ICPR on the Shlokavartika of Kumarila Bhatta. The topic for today is the light of Vyakarana in poetry. Over to you, Shardaji.
Thank you very much, Arvindji. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vagarthaviva Sampruktav, Vagartha Pradipattaye, Jagatav Pitarau Vande, Parvati Parameshwarau. Namaskar and a very good morning to everyone. I feel greatly privileged to be in this august panel on this symposium by Indica and express my deep gratitude to the organizers. Thank you very much. When we talk of Vyakarana or grammar, then it is the foundation for all language, and poetry is no exception. Can I have the PPT? Are you beginning that, Meg? Okay. I meant the previous slide. No, that's fine. I think I will take a little time to come. Yeah, the first one. So when we talk of poetry and we see how grammar is the foundation for the language of poetry, in a symposium like this, a talk like this, we have to look at the nuances. So that comes to the question, what is poetry at all? How is poetic language different from any normal language that we use in our everyday transactions? For that, we can say that while reality consists of the good, bad, and ugly, poetry selects only what is beautiful, what is elegant, what is charming, and presents only that aspect of the situation that actually creates an interest and evokes an emotional response. So that is the important aspect of what is poetic language. It is more charming and often uses an indirect or an oblique reference. We don't say things in a straightforward manner, but try to convey something in an indirect manner. So we must see what that indirect manner is when it comes to poetic language. We can say that Vyakarana as such can be divided into two aspects. One is the prakriya, that is the structural aspect that tells us about the prefixes and suffixes and how the formation of words in a sentence are made. So that would be largely specific to the Sanskrit language. The other aspect of Vyakarana is the darshana part, that is the philosophical aspect that has a lot of linguistic concepts, and those would be more universal. It may apply to probably all languages, many languages at least. And in most situations, we will find when we are dealing with a specific issue in the subject, these may be combined. It's not like they are always clinically separate. So in the next, coming to poetry, we can look at one of the earliest definitions that we have, that of Bhāmaha in the 7th century. He said, Shabdartau Sahitau Kavyam. So when we look at that old definition, it's very simple, but it points to the two important aspects of what is Kavyam. That is the Shabda aspect, the word, the sounds, and then the meaning. So Shabda and Artha together create fine poetry. So in the next 20 minutes, we shall try to look at these foundational concepts in the two sciences, the two fields, and see how they are combined. But we all know that the Sanskrit alphabet, of course, no, the previous one, yes, this one. We know that the Sanskrit alphabet, which begins with Ayung and the Maheshwara Sutras, they are arranged in this manner with the vowels from A to Aha and the Vyanjanas. We know that the vowels have a short sound, that is the Hrasva Swara, and the long sound, which is the Dirgha Swara. And the alphabet, the Varnas, are classified according to the articulation, where in the mouth they are articulated. We know this. But more significantly, from the listener's point of view, they are also classified as Karkasha Varnaha, or the harsh sounds, that is the first two columns there, and the Mrudu Varnaha, or the softer sounds. So in choosing the words for poetry, it's a very sophisticated and elegant choice that the fine poet, the great poet makes, that they use the sounds that form a good part of the effect that poetry gives us when we hear. It is not just the meaning, but the sounds themselves. For example, if it is a very heroic theme or a very imposing or harsh or very serious situation, we will find more of the harsher sounds being employed in the words that they choose. Whereas if it's a softer theme, where it's lasya, it's lalita, it's gentle, maybe pathos or shrungara in particular, we find more of the mridu varnas being used. If it's a soft, gentle theme, so we won't have alphabets like kra, chra, shra. These would be used much less. So a combination of the softer sounds gives more melody to the composition. The next slide, please. Syllables are also classified as guru or long or heavy syllables and lagu or short syllables. Now, obviously, the Hrasva Swaras would have lagu count. Hrasva Swaras have a count of 1 in time, whereas Dirgha Swaras have a count of 2. It is twice the time taken for that. So the matras are double of that. Now, the diphthongs or the samyuktaksharas, they are also given a lagu weight, a guru weight, because they are heavy syllables. They take a little more time to pronounce something which has 2 consonants in sandwiched together. So this is the foundation of the vast science of vritta or chandas, which is the meter, which is the metrical composition of Sanskrit verse, is based on this. The Nati Shastra, which is one of our earliest texts, talks about the vritta or the meter, starting from 1 to 24 alphabets, syllables, in a pada. A pada is 1/4 of a verse. So a symmetrical verse, a meter, would have all 4 having equal number of syllables. There are asymmetrical vrittas also. So, for example, Anushtup has eight syllables in each pada. Anushtup is very popular in Bhagavad Gita and Vishnu Sahasranama and the Ramayana. So that is something most of us are familiar with. Anushtup becomes a group of vrittas that have 8 syllables in each pada. So a few examples are here. Arali has lagu, guru, lagu, lagu, guru, lagu, lagu, guru. So this pattern would be repeated. This becomes very important in a long composition because only that can enable a rhythmic recitation or chanting. It's very difficult to read prose for any length of pages if you have tried that. And in earlier times, we know that we had a largely oral tradition. So to enable recitation or chanting of long passages, the vritta and the meter was very, very important. Any slip up in the vritta would have a problem in the smooth chanting, and it was considered a defect. This also tells us when we look at simple numbers of maybe 4 or 6 or 16 or 20 in each pada, look at the number of permutations and combinations that one can have in these patterns. The texts on vritta speak of hundreds for each number. They go to 300, 500, 600. So these are the number of vrittas possible, but they may be classified into smaller groups to make composition and recitation easier. The next aspect. The reason I wanted to focus on the Shabda aspect is that it's a little bit of a neglected topic in modern times. Led by Western Indologists, most of us feel that poetry is to be studied through the translations or the meanings, and then we lose a lot in the audible aspect of the poetry. The next one, please. So the styles and sounds of verse are depending largely on what we hear, on how they sound. And way back in the earliest texts on Sahitya, these are being divided into broadly three types of compositions or 3 styles of compositions called Riti. The Pāṇchāli was known to be simple and sweet, had soft sounds, short words, and loose structure. The Gita Govinda is an outstanding example. It's largely made of Pāṇchāli and the Vaidarbhi. Vaidarbhi combines it and it is the best. So we have very soft sounds, simple constructions, and a lot of alliteration and rhythm that give it a more melodious feel. For example, there is one that is describing Krishna pining for Radha and feeling very depressed and wandering in the woods and all by himself. The Sakhi tells Radha, Vasati vipina vitane tyajati lalita dhama lutati dharani shayane bahu vilapati tava nama. He's rolling about on the ground. He has left his nice home, a mansion, and he is now in the woods, and he rolls about in the ground and goes on chanting Radha's name. The next style of Riti, the style of composition, is called Gaudiya. It was grand, it was majestic, imposing, it had forceful sounds and power. It conveyed the ojas and the kanti and the long compounds. The invocation of Bana Bhatta's Harshacharita, Bana is known to write in a prose called Utkalika Praya, which was very difficult, very advanced, very majestic and with long compounds and very difficult actually. It's like going through a jungle or something. So the first one, Namastunga Shirashchumbi Chandra Chamara Charave, Trailokya Nagararambha Mulastambhaya Shambhave. So it's an invocation to Shambhu or Shiva, who is the foundation for the 3 cities. So we can see that ojas in the kind of alphabets that he chooses. There is another example, the first verse of Jayadeva's Gita Govinda also, where he is announcing that he, the great poet, has been struck by Saraswati, and therefore he is composing this prabandham, this musical composition that comes. He says, Vāgdevata Charita Chittita Chitta Satma Padmavati Charana Charana Chakravarti Shri Vasudeva Ratikeli Katha Sametam Enam Tanoti Jayadeva Kavif Prabandham. So we can see the forceful style and a more gentle style. And the Vaidarbhi Riti was to combine both these. Invariably, compositions have both styles. They cannot be strictly this. So according to the mood and the situation, the good poet does change his composition style too. Next one, please. Now, when we look at the words and sentences as being the structure or the foundation or the form or the body of literature. A question was very early asked as to what makes its soul. What is the soul of literature? For that, there was one, the Vakrokti school. Their answer was that the manner of conveying meaning, the oblique reference or the indirect way, the charming way of conveying something was the soul of poetry. So we come to what Vyakarana says about the word meaning, the word and meaning, which are inseparably connected. Vagarthaveva sampraptau, like Parvati and Parameshwara. The word meaning has three ways of understanding its meaning. The first one is called the Abhida. This is the lexicon meaning. This is the direct meaning that any dictionary would give. It is not based on the context or the usage. A word has its meaning that is eternally related to that meaning. That is called the Abhida, or the primary meaning, the direct meaning. The next level is the indirect meaning. That is called Lakshana. Sometimes the word used does not connote its lexicon meaning. We use words even in normal life, leave alone poetry. We use a lot of innuendo, sarcasm. We use a lot of indirect means of conveying what we want to convey. So there is Lakshana, which is indirect meaning. For an example, the Gangayam Ghoshaha, the village on the Ganga. Now, Ganga means the pravaha, or the stream of water that is flowing. So obviously, we cannot have a village located on the stream itself. So therefore, the word Ganga here does not convey its own meaning, but it conveys the banks, which are closely associated. Because there is a problem in taking the primary meaning, it has to connote the indirect meaning, which is the next level called Lakshana. There are often advantages in saying things with Lakshana. In this case, we have the advantage that it is so close to the Ganga, then you get the salubriousness, the coolness, and the sacredness of a location like that. So Vyanjana has its advantages. It is used when there is a problem with the primary meaning. It is not possible to have the direct connotation. So then we see what indirect way it can convey something. When we analyze it, we find that there is something to gain in using Lakshana rather than saying that the village is on the banks of the river. Another example that is given in Shastra is when we keep curd out in the sun, or we dry out vattal and vegetables and fruits are dried in the sun, and the boy is told to sit guard and to keep the crows away. But the crows includes squirrels or insects or flies or any other creatures, sparrows, any other creatures that come to eat up the food. The word crows includes that. So this is also Lakshana by indirect connotation. So when we look at the word meaning, Vyakarana gives us two ways of understanding the word meaning. One is the etymological meaning that is derived from how the word is derived. It's called the Yogartha. So for example, the word Vaigyanik. The word Vaigyanik comes from Vigyan. The word Vigyan comes from Vyupasarg Vigyan. So when we go into the analyzing the root of the word, how it is formed, then we will have a meaning. We have a precise meaning that comes from that formation. This is the etymology. But we also have a popular meaning, that is what is in usage. Prayoga Sharanaha hi Vyakaranaha was quoted earlier. So in usage, just as we have slang or something, the usage becomes very important. So that is the Rudyartha, and Yogat Rudir Bhaliyan is said. So usage is given more important. For example, if you have the word Pankaja, Pankaja simply means the Yogartha, or the etymological meaning would be Panke Jayate, that is born in the mud. But the word Pankaja is used only for lotus, not for other things. So here is an example of a Rudyartha where a word is to be understood the way people have used it. Another example is Ashwagandha, which is a herb. So if they say bring Ashwagandha, the Ayurveda preparation, it means bring the leaves of that herb. It doesn't mean Ashwa and Gandha, which means horse and smell. So here we have a clear example of how the Rudyartha is a lot more important, and which is the valid meaning in that situation. The third way of understanding meaning is Vyanjana, that is suggested meaning, what is hinted at, what is suggested. It doesn't come from the words. Now, serious Shastra, scientific writing like Mimamsa and Nyaya, do not discuss Vyanjana because they cannot afford to have that ambiguity, and neither can they tie down the Vyanjana Shakti to certain norms or restrictions. It is the ambit of poetry. Poetry thrives on Vyanjana. It is the suggested meaning, it is the hinted meaning that is in most cases gives you a wonderful sense of appreciation and helps you understand what the poet may have wanted to convey. I have a few examples on the next slide. Kalidasa's Kumarasambhavam, these are all from the first canto. Initially, he is describing the Himalayas, the Himalayan region itself, which is the location for the whole Mahakavya. So he says the peaks of the Himalayas are so tall that after the Saptarishis have picked the lotuses from the slopes for their puja, early morning puja, even before sunrise, whatever lotuses are left are opened by the sun's rays, which are coming from below. Now, this is a very strange situation. In all lakes and ponds where lotuses thrive, they bloom when the sun rises and the rays come from above in the sky down to the flowers. But the Himalayas are an exception because the lotuses are blooming on the high peaks of the mountain. And Saptarishi here is not just the Saptarishis as the 7 sages, but the constellation also that is there up in the sky. So he says, Saptarshi hastava chitava sheshan yadho vivaswan parivartamanaha padmani yasya akrasaro ruhani prabodayat urdhvam urdhvamukaihi mayukaihi. So the rays are coming from below. Here, I want to point out to the usage of padmani and saroruhani. So saroruha is also like pankaja, it means lotus. But when Kalidasa has used it here, juxtaposed with padmani, he means the lotuses, and agra saroruhani, he means on the ponds, on the lakes, growing on the peaks of the lakes in the Himalayas. So here the saroruha is actually used in the Yogartha, in the meaning of growing in the ponds. The next one, they describe Shiva as the lord of Pashus. He is there towards the end of the canto after describing Parvati, and then Kalidasa also says that Shiva is also in the same region, in the neighborhood, practicing tapas, because ever after Sati gave up her body out of her anger and distress from Daksha, her father, ever since she gave up her body, Shiva has been unattached to anything or anybody, and he is alone and he is unmarried. And the reference to Shiva is Pashupati, as we know. The reference to Shiva is Pashunam Pati. He says, Yadaiva Purve Janane Shariram Sa Daksha Roshat Sudati Sasajja Tada Prabhrityeva Vimukta Sangaha Patif Pashunam Aparigraho Abhut. Here, the grammatical formation of samas is used. Pati Pashunam, Pashunam Pati. If he had said Pashupati, as a unit, the samas refers to the total meaning, which is Shiva. But since Kalidasa has specifically split it up here, and he says he was Lord only of the Pashus. Of course, Pashu here means the Jivas. It is a philosophical connotation. But in Sahitya, for the Shrigara Rasa here, it points out to the fact that he was Pati of Pashus, but not a lady. So that is the nuance that is given by using the samas here, not using the samas here. Then he further explains that Shiva is Ashtamurti. He's one of the Ashtamurtis. He is the one who bestows the phalas for all the tapas. Why is he doing the tapas? So, Tatragni Madhaya Samit Samidham Swameva Murti Antaram Ashtamurtihi Swayam Vidhata Tapasah Palanam Kenapi Kamena Tapas Chachara. By what reason was he using? Why is he doing this tapas? Kenapi Kamena. Why is he doing this? So again, here you have the dhvani or the hint in Sahitya, where the answer is that he doesn't get Parvati so easily. He has also been doing tapas for a long time. So Kenapi Kamena, they say, Prayojanam Anutishya na mandobi pravartati. Even a fool will not set out on a task without a purpose. But here there cannot be any purpose because he is himself Swayam Ashtamurti, and then he is worshipping the fire and doing yaga for what? So there the hint is that Parvati also comes after a lot of tapas. The next one, please. This is another important point that I need to say, that the Alankarikas in Sahitya Shastra hold Alankara or figures of speech or ornamentation or embellishment very highly. we need to look at the structure of the basic figure of speech, which is the simile or the upama. So I would take a few minutes to give the structure of this. I don't have too many other technical things. It's very simple. But from the grammar point of view, to construct the sentence correctly, we have to follow certain norms. But it is a foundation of this whole figure of speech. The upama consists of 4 parts. It's called upamana is a comparison. That is, what are we comparing? What are we using as a comparison, as a standard? The upameya is the object to be compared, whatever is relevant for our situation. If you say the boy is as brave as a lion, the boy is the relevant thing that we want to praise. The lion is the comparison. The upameya is what we have here to be compared. The vachaka shabda is the word stating the likeness, to state this is like that. Simhaha iva manavaka. The sadharana dharma, there has to be something in common to have a comparison. You cannot compare some things with absolutely nothing in common. In fact, poets do that, but then they state what is it in common that they are seeing. So that is what brings the beauty. So a purnopama is defined as something that explicitly mentions these 4 aspects. So let's look at a few truly outstanding examples. This is from the Raghuvamsha, where Kalidasa, no, the previous one, I need to explain that. Sa Rajyam Guruna Dattam Pratipadya Adhikam Babhav Dinante Nihitam Tejaha Savitreva Hutashanaha. When Dilipa handed over the kingdom to Raghu, and Raghu became the next king, he shone, he blazed brighter, like the fire blazes in the evening at the end of the day. See, during the day, we don't see the flames. But as the sun sets, the fire burns more brightly. And there is an old poetic convention that when the sun sets, he transfers his brilliance, his glory to the fire. So, sir, here you see the upameya is Saha, is Raghu. The upamana is Hutashanaha, the fire. He's comparing him to the fire. Rajyam Dattam is the same formation as Nihitam Tejaha. There is a rule in grammar that in the upama, you must have the upamana and upameya in the same linga, vachana and vibhakti. There cannot be a discordance in that. Then Rajyam Dattam, Raghu has received the kingdom. The fire has received the brilliance. Guruna, one from the father. The fire from the sun, Savitra. The upama vachaka shabda, Iva is there. And the pratipadya, sadharana dharma, is the adhikam babav. He shone brighter. Next slide, please. So this is not for nothing that Kalidasa is known for his upamas, where it is so wonderful. There is another one here, the first stanza of Kanakadara Stotram. Angam hare pulaka bhushanam ashrayanti bhranganganeva mukula bharanam tamanam angi kritakhila vibhutira pangalina Mangalyadastu mama mangala devataya. Here, the upamana is Apangalila. He is describing the glance of Mahalakshmi, Mangala Devata, whose very glance contains all the riches of the entire world. Angikrita Akhila Vibhutihi, Apangalila, her glance. Her glance is being described. It is being compared to the female bee, Vringangana. Why? Because her glance is fixed on the form of Hari, his body. Angam Harehe. Why? What is his body like? His body is Pulaka Bhushanam. It is enhanced with goosebumps. Why? Because she is looking at him. Like the way the bee is fixed on the mango tree, the tamala tree, which has got buds all over. So there you see Upamana is Apangalila. The upameya is Bringangana, both are in Pratama Vibhakti Striling. Pulaka Bhushanam Angam Harehe, that is Ashrayanti, that is her glance is looking at Harehe Angam, which is Pulaka Bhushanam. And here the Tamala, the bee is going to the Tamala tree, which is Mukula Bharanam. And the Sadharana Dharma is Ashrayanti. So if you look at the grammar there, 1 to 1, they coincide exactly. Next one, please. I'll be very brief with this. There's Bharavi, Bharavi is known for his profound statements and the depth of meaning. In this, when the Pandavas are in the forest and they are, nothing, they are under the sky. And so Draupadi and Bhima are exhorting him to show some action, come out of his lethargy and do something about fighting the Kauravas. So Bhima tells him that although he is well read in all the Vedas and all the branches of learning, how has Yudhishthira's brain become paralyzed? How it has sunk low, like a female elephant that is stuck in the mud. Now here, the Upamana is the female elephant, Karini, Pankam Etya, when it has got stuck in the mud. The Upameya is not Yudhishthira, but his Matihi, his intellect. Viparyayam Etya, how it has come to a change in circumstances, a change in fortunes, bad luck, how it has come to misfortune and sunk low. Iva, Sadharana Dharma Avasidati, Chatusrishwapi te Vivekini Nripa, Vidyasu Nirudhi Magata. Your Mati, which is Vivekini in all the branches of learning, which knows good from bad, how has it become paralyzed like this? How is it sinking low? Like a Katham Etya Matir Viparyayam Karini Pankam Iva Avasidati. There's another very quick one. I won't explain that. Draupadi is talking of the sad plight of each of the Pandavas. And when she talks of Bhima, she talks of Arjuna, she talks of Yudhishthira himself. When she speaks about the twins, she compares them to a pair of elephants. Vananta Shaya Katini Kritakriti, it is in Dvivachan. Kachachitau, Vishwagir, Iva Agajau, Gajau, like a pair of elephants, wild elephants. These two tender twins have got their form and their hair disheveled by sleeping on the hard ground. Katham to metau, Dhriti Samyamau, Yamau, these twins, who are so firm in their resolve. Seeing these two, how is your heart not breaking? So this is what she says. So this is a very rare simile where the pair of twins are compared to two. So that illustrates the grammar point I was talking about. The next slide, please. I think I'll be very quick when we talk about the Vyakarana Darshana. The Bhartṛhari explains at length about the Vakya Spota or the Akhanda Vakya, where he basically says that the idea, the meaning of a sentence is a single idea. It strikes you in a flash and you cannot break up the idea into pieces or parts. He says pieces and parts are a practical exercise, but they are not really valid when you look at the total idea. For example, if I say, fetch the newspaper, in the morning we are in an upper floor flat, say, fetching the newspaper means something, to go down and collect. Fetching the milk may seem something else. To fetch the car from the garage is different. Fetching the child from school is different. The sentence constructions look very similar, but what we understand is the total action and the manner in which that has to be done. That is the true meaning of the sentence. Of course, Mimamsa goes to great length to explain these things. But when you look at how the meaning of a sentence is not always hinged on the words exactly, now that is the foundation for our suggestion and Dhvani. So the Akhanda Vakya concept is a foundation of the Dhvani theory in Sahitya Shastra. And the Shabda Brahma, that is what Bhartṛhari talks of Shabda being the Tattva of Brahman. Brahman is described as Shabda Tattva. That means the essence of Brahman is Shabda, which is not just the language spoken, but it goes to the 4 levels of Vaikhari, Madhyama, Pashyanti and Para. When it goes to the level of Para, it is consciousness, which is again the other side of a coin of knowledge itself. So that corresponds, that is what the Rasa theory of Indian aesthetics builds upon. And Abhinavagupta and many others after him have explained that in detail. So I hope I have succeeded in showing some connection in this short presentation between Vyakarana and Kavya. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you, Sharda ji. After the Mahapadhyay's presentation of how Shabda and Artha relate in a philosophical and technical way, it was wonderful to see your presentation of Shabda and Artha gracefully enjoying each other's company in Kavya with wonderfully assorted examples. It's time now for us to return from Kavya to Shaddarshana territory as I invite Dr. Jayaraman Mahadevan, who is Director, Textual Research Division in Yoga Indica. Jayaraman Mahadevan ji holds a PhD in Sanskrita from the University of Madras, topic being the doctrine of Tantra Yukti, a study. He underwent traditional Gurukula education in Vedas, Taittiriya Shakha Mula, and Prasthanatraya Shastras from 1998 to 2005 in Veda Vijnana Gurukulam, Bengaluru, under Pracharya Kotemane Ramachandra Bhatt. He is currently Director of Division of Textual Research in Yoga at Indica Academy. He earlier served as a Director, Research Department of Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, Chennai for over a decade from 2010 to 2021. His expertise in the field of yoga, academics, and research has been recognized and utilized by various academic and research organizations by nominating him to various academic boards and councils, including the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library at CISR, Government of India, as a task force member, Kalakshetra Foundation as a governing board member, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, Chennai. He recently received in 2021 the Samskrita Grantha Puraskara from Karnataka Sanskrit University for his Sanskrit book Mantrartha Chintanam. His Tamil translation of the Sanskrit text Hatha Yoga Pradipika was published earlier this year by Indica. Today we'll hear from him on Shabda Yoga, role and significance of Vyakarana for yoga. Over to you, Dr. Jayaraman ji.
Namaste, Arvindji. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for that introduction. It is indeed a very great opportunity and a privilege to be part of this panel of speakers. Wonderful scholarship we could hear in the preceding papers. Now, I will get into my paper right away. I'll share the screen. I hope you can see the screen. So this is the topic, Shabda Yoga, role and significance of Vyakarana for yoga. So that is my paper. And there is the traditional invocation that is done by every yoga practitioner across the globe. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarottam pravaram muninam Patanjalim Pranjaliranatosmi. So in this very invocation itself, we can see that there is a reverential salutation to Patanjali, sage Patanjali, who this celebrates sage Patanjali, reverentially salutes sage Patanjali as Padena Vacham, so who did the Vyakarana Shastra also, who created the Vyakarana Shastra for Padashuddhi also. So in that sense, that there is a reverential connection, knowingly or unknowingly, people across the globe, they salute sage Patanjali, those practitioners of yoga, they salute sage Patanjali as a Vyakaranakara also. So in that sense, there is a reverential connect already there in practice across the globe, across all yoga studios in the world. So so we can see such a connection, beautiful connection existing. Now, now let's go into how important is this topic in the context of the Vyakarana for this Yoga Shastra. So I feel that it is very important because of certain things. So in the light of, we can see that there is attempts to trivialize the role of Samskrita for yoga by certain pseudo-intellectual activity. Prajnavada, I'll just give a brief aspects. And then this Vyakarana for yoga is very important because the misleading dictionary entries, if someone says why we need Vyakarana or Sanskrit for yoga, I will consult dictionary. Dictionaries are also problematic. And then even in the interpretations, there are, or if someone says I will use the translations, those translations and interpretations are also fanciful. So we can see, I will just give certain ideas in this regard. first emphasizing how important this topic, and then we'll give certain examples for that. Now, so in that light, Vyakarana and Samskrita for yoga is very important. I'll just give one example for the pseudo-intellectualism, Prajnavada, as Bhagavan Krishna would put. So to trivialize the role of Samskrita for yoga, there was an article in 2018 which says, what is in the name? By a very people who are known to be associated with a very revered tradition in yoga. So in that article, unsuspectingly in the Hindu itself, it was published. So practicing the true aim of yoga to calm and control the mind does not require a knowledge of Sanskrit. So we can see that without Samskrita or Vyakarana or the Shastric approach of learning the Samskrita, how would one know the true aim? Then only when one knows the true aim, one can practice. So this is why what I call as pseudo-intellectualism in trivializing the role of Samskrita. And the same article says, many variations of asanas are easier practiced and described than named, especially in Sanskrit. So this is another gem of a quotation that we find from this article. Again, the problem here is, see, without naming an asana, and the Samskrita names are very appropriate. Without naming them in Samskrita, how would you may practice for yourself, but how would you teach that without naming? So in that sense, so these are very, very shallow kind of things, but are very popularly circulated in media like the Hindu. And I'm not going into refuting that article in this now, because it has already been done. I have done it in 2018 in an article. So the links will be shared now in the chat box. So you can read. So how attempts are made to trivialize Samskrita's role and in learning yoga. And again, if someone says, as I mentioned earlier, I will consult the dictionaries. No need for yoga, no need for Samskrita or Vyakarana. The dictionary entries are not only misleading, they are notorious also. For example, one of the famous dictionaries, that is of this Monier-Williams, we can see that for the word yoga and especially the Hatha yoga, so he says that a kind of forced yoga or abstract meditation in which performed with much self-torture, such as standing on one leg, holding up the arms, inhaling smoke with head inverted. See, these are all the terrible interpretations, that entries that you get in Hatha Yoga on the term Hatha Yoga in the so-called famous dictionary Monier-Williams. Whereas, is this really Hatha Yoga? When we come to the Samskrita literature, where they give the word split, etc. Hascha Thascha Hathau, Surya Chandrau, Tayor Yogaha Hatha Yogaha, Pranapanayor Aikya Lakshanaha, Pranayamo Hatha Yogaha. So where is pranayama, the traditional understanding of Hatha Yoga, and where is this self-torture of hanging upside down, etc., and smoking, etc.? So dictionaries are also misleading. So hence one cannot say that I can merely depend upon dictionary and then no need for Samskrita or Vyakarana. Then again, even the Western scholars on yoga, they themselves feel that there are fanciful interpretations in translations and editions of Yoga Sutra, where they say all kinds of fanciful explanations have been proposed for this aphorism, especially 2.47, Prayatna Shaithilya Ananta Samapattibhyam. So this is stated by none other than George Feuerstein, one of the respected translators of Yoga Sutra. So again, translations and interpretations are fanciful. Dictionary entries are misleading, and also we can see attempts for trivializing Samskrita. So in this light, it is indeed very important for the right understanding of the import of Yoga Shastra. Only when we understand, we can practice well. So it is very important we get to Samskrita and that to get to Vyakarana. And one more general argument that will be said, that why Vyakarana, etc. Because yoga is a practice discipline. No need for any textual study and the least grammar. So why would I get into entangle myself into grammar? Because it's a practice discipline. Yoga is a practice discipline. No need to study. To this, if this question is raised, again, the traditional acharyas themselves respond. They say that yoga is not all practice alone. It is also study. Swadhyaya yoga masita, yogat swadhyaya mamane, swadhyaya yoga sanyuktya paramatma prakashate. So Swadhyaya and yoga should go together. In this context, Swadhyaya is in Yoga Shastra commentaries we see Swadhyaya Moksha Shastra Adhyayanam Pranavadi Mantra Japova. That is Swadhyaya. And yoga here in this context means the practice of yoga like asana, pranayama, dhyana, etc. So the study of the Shastra and also the practice of yoga should go together. So no escape by saying that only then the practice will be enriched by knowledge. Or else if there is a disconnect between practice and knowledge, we will be clutching only at the straws of the yoga. So in that sense, Swadhyaya study is very essential component of yoga. And then now let's latch on to the word Swadhyaya and slowly connect back to the Vyakarana. So how do we understand the word Swadhyaya? Again, popularly mistranslated word Swadhyaya is Swadhyaya, means self-study. No. If you consult the Sayana Bhashya, especially Swadhyāyā Pramadaha, in this context where Swadhyaya is used, Sayanacharya in his Bhashya says, Swadhyaya is to be analyzed grammatically in this way. Su-a-adhyāyaha. Sushtu avritya adhyāyaha swadhyāyaha. So, adhyāyaha is a study and sushtu avritya. Sushtu means well. So, the study adhyaya should be sushtu, well. And avritya should be repeated. Means once I read the Yoga Sutra, I am done with it. No, it cannot happen. There should be avritti. And then in the process of studying, it should be sushtu also. The study should also be well. Now let's focus on this well aspect. So how to do the sushtu adhyaya? So how to do the sushtu study of this Yoga Shastra? So we can see that acharyas are there to guide us. So yairime gurubhi purvam pada vakya pramanataha vyakhyata sarva vedantaha tannityam pranatosmiham. So especially this Shankaracharya Bhashya Shloka, it says that Sushtu Adhyaya of any Shastra, be it Vedanta or especially it was stated in the context of Vedanta, which is equally applicable to Yoga. So any study of Shastra with Pada, Vakya and Pramana Shastra, which was already mentioned by Arvindji in the introduction, Pada Shastra is Vyakarana, Vakya Shastra is Mimamsa, Pramana Shastra is Nyaya Shastra. So, any adhyaya or study of Shastra with these aids, then it becomes a sushtu adhyaya. Or, so there already Pada Shastra is there. So, to make your adhyaya or study sushtu, Pada Shastra or Vyakarana Shastra is critical. Hence, it is critical as it is true for any other Shastra. It is true for Yoga Shastra also. Now, we can the sushtu of it can be approached in a different angle also, much more focused on the Vyakarana Shastra. In Patanjala Rahasya commentary to Yoga Sutra, we see a beautiful shloka, which is popular elsewhere also. Padacchedaha padarthoktihi vigraho vakya yojana akshepasya samadhanam vyakhyanam panchadha akshepasya samadhanam vyakhya panchavidha smrita. So sushtu adhyaya can happen through Padavakya Pramana Shastras, and that too, sushtu adhyaya or studying well with the Pada Shastra can be done well, really well, through the Vyakhya Krama. What is Vyakhya Krama? Vyakhya Krama contains 5 components: Padacchedaha, Padarthokti, splitting of the words, Padarthoktihi, meaning of the words, stating the meaning of the words, and Vigraha, splitting the compounds, and then Vakya Yojana, connecting the sentence, paraphrasing it appropriately, Akshepasya Samadhanam, responding, resolving objections. So, so this is Vyakhya Krama. In this Vyakhya Krama, there is a critical, so Vyakhya Kramena Sushtu Adhyaya. Sushtu Adhyaya, studying well in the Vyakhya Krama, involves these 5 aspects. And in all these 5 aspects, there is a very critical role of Vyakarana or Pada Shastra. For Padacheda, Sandhi knowledge is needed. So only then you can split it properly. Sandhi coupled with Abhyasa, Bhasha Abhyasa and Sandhi is essential. For Padarthokti, to explain the meaning of the word, to derive the etymology, there is the requirement of the capability to analyze Viveka of Prakriti and Pratyaya. What is the root word? What is the suffix, prefix, etc. So Dhatu, Pratyaya, the Krit, Tadhita, all these Pratyayas. that knowledge is needed. And then for Vigraha, the Samasa Vritti is to be known, Bahuvihi, Dvandva, all those Karmadharya, Vigu, all these Samasas are required. Knowledge of that is required. For Vakya Yojana, again, for paraphrasing, the knowledge of Vibhaktis, the knowledge of Karaka, Visheshana Visheshya Bhava, all these is necessary. And for Akshepasya Samadhanam, all the above are needed and more. So in that sense, that for Sushtu Adhyaya of any Shastra, including Yoga Shastra, Vyakyakrama can be taken, and in that Vyakyakrama, we see all these role of Vyakarana Shastra very well. And then I will be giving one example each for all these, one or two examples each for how Padacheda is important for Yoga Shastra, Padarthokti, Vigraha, Vakya Yojana, Akshepasya Samadhana, to illustrate that by approaching Yoga Shastra with this Vyakyakrama, which indeed is which indeed stands on the basis or the cornerstone of Vyakarana, how it becomes very meaningful. So in consulting, the examples are provided from the Yoga Sutras with the commentaries, Hatha Yoga Pradipika with Jyotsna commentary, and Bhagavad Gita with Shankara Bhashyam. In the sense, we would have covered almost various strands of yoga. Their Ashtanga Yoga, Kriya Yogas are covered. Asana Pranayama Mudra, Hatha Yoga tradition is covered. And then Karma Bhakti Jnana Raja Yogas are covered. In the sense, while taking up for the illustrating the 5 dimensions of Vyakyakrama Adhyayana, then the examples are taken from these sources, which in a sense covers almost the various shades and strands of yoga. So we'll go into each of these dimensions of Sushtu Adhyaya through Vyakarana. So for Padacheda, we'll see the example. Being in the field of yoga for the last decade and a half, I've seen very horrible word splittings that are done for the words of Yoga Sutra, especially. For example, there is this word Prayatna Shaithilyananta Samapatti-bhyam. 2.47, which was earlier mentioned by George Feuerstein, where fanciful interpretation occurs. So this Prayatna Shaithilya Ananta Samapatti Bhyam is split as Prayatna, Shaithilya, Ananta, Samapatti and Bhyam. So, but those who are trained in the Vyakarana Shastra would know that this is one Samasta Pada, that is Prayatna Shaithilya Ananta Samapatti Bhyam, where Prayatna Shaithilya is a meaningful unit. And then Ananta Samapatti is a meaningful unit. So two techniques, when these two combine, so it becomes Prayatna Shaithilya Ananta Samapatti, and the third case is Prayatna Shaithilya Ananta Samapatti Bhyam. So the instrumental case. So this much of knowledge goes in understanding the form, or else people end up splitting it as Prayatna, Shaithilya, Ananta, Samapatti and Bhyam, and they give meaning for each of this without knowing how they are connected or fused together or held together through the samasa. So that is one example that how word splits can go horribly wrong. And for example, again we see Yoganushāsanam in Yoga Sutra itself. The word Yoganushāsanam is there. I have also heard in certain conferences, much of the time is wasted on whether it is yog or yoga. People quarrel over these. In North India, they say it as yog. And in popular usage, it is called as yoga. So then there is a quarrel, which is whether it is yog or yoga. Neither it is. If a person knows the Savarna-Dirgha Sandhi, one can know that it is yoga anushāsanam. Rasvakara at the end and anushāsanam. Or else there will be a quarrel and precious time will be wasted in conferences. And then again, Swarupe Vasthanam. So this Purva Rupa is there. If that Purva Rupa Sandhi Jnana is there, we will split it as Swarupe and Avasthanam, or else we will end up Dashara Mashara, doing the Dashara Mashara thing. So in this way, all the Visarga Sandhi and other Sandhis are there. The knowledge is very essential. Dukkha Daurmana Syangame Jayatva Shwasa Prashwasa Vikshepa Sahabhuva. Long sutras are there. So hence, in that context, to unpack the meanings, first we have to split the words properly. These are fashionable words which are used, unpacking the meanings, etc. First, the basic things we have to do is to split the words properly to get to the meaning. So for this, the knowledge of Sandhi is very essential, without which the interpretations can go horribly wrong. So this is not only for Yoga Sutra, even in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, right in the first shloka, there is a long expression. Vibhrajate pronnata rajamargam arodhu vichan adhirohini va. So this needs quite a lot of word splitting. Pronnata rajamargam arodhum ichan adhirohini iva. If a person can split it confidently, then the explanation of the meaning can go about in a confident manner, or else there is a lot of problem. Even in description of asanas, for example, in the Virasana, Vinyase Duruni Sthiram, it has to be split as Vinyaset Uruni. Again, Itarasmim Tatha, Itarasmin Tatha. So, when even the correct technique of practice of asana, the shlokas that are there, they are fused with conjunctions. So, only when we have the knowledge of the sandhis, or at least the bhasha abhyasa, to split the sandhis properly, we can get to the technique properly, which is true for pranayama also. Pratar madhyandine sayam ardharatre cha kumbhakan shanai rashiti paryantam chaturvaram samabhyase. So again, same example from Hatha Yoga Pradipika, shanaihi ashiti paryantam, the visarga sandhi. So in this way, to get to the techniques properly, you have to read the shlokas properly. To read the shlokas and understand the meaning properly, you have to be able to split the words properly, which comes from the Sandhi Jnana and Bhasha Abhyasa, which is true for Bhagavad Gita also. How to meditate? Tatraikagram manakritva yatachittendriya kriyaha upavishyasane yunjyat yogam atma vishuddhaye. Lot of word splits are involved. Yunjyat yogam atma vishuddhaye. Similarly, the lifestyle is also important in the practice of dhyana. So, natyashnatastu yogosti, that is described in this shloka. Natyashnatastu yogosti, na atyashnataha tu yogaha asti. Similarly, nachati swapnashilasya, na cha atiswapnashilasya. So, neither too much of sleep nor excess eating. So, all these very critical, crucial inputs on lifestyle disciplines, which are part of yoga practice, they are expressed in Samskrita shlokas with a lot of conjunctions. We need the ability to split them properly, again, to get to the techniques properly. So for Padacheda, which leads to Sushtu Adhyaya of Yoga Shastra, of course, we need Vyakarana Jnana and Bhasha Abhyasa. Now let us go to the second aspect, that is Padarthokti, to give the meaning. So to the ability to derive the meaning of the words. So for that, as I mentioned earlier, the Prakriti Pratyaya Jnana, what is the Dhatu, what is the Pratyaya, that's very essential. Let's get to a few examples in this. The very meaning of the word yoga, let us see that. So in that commentary, so what is the meaning of yoga? Generally, whenever someone starts a talk on yoga, they will say yoga is union. So that's how the talk begins. What union, trade union, we don't know. But in the context of Yoga Sutra, what is the meaning intended for the word yoga? So from where it is to be derived? What is the contextual meaning that is implied in that text, particular, specific to the text? We see the commentators clarify it by taking recourse to Vyakarana, by taking recourse to the Dhātupāṭha, where they say Shabda Sandeha Nimittam Artha Sandeham Apanayati. So what are the elements? What is the Dhatu from where this word has been derived? So based on which we explore that, the Artha Sandeha, the doubt on the meaning can also be overcome. So Yuja Samadho Ityasmad Vyutpannaha Samadhyarthaha Natu Yujiri Yoge Ityasmad Sanyogartha Ityarthaha. Tattva Vaisharadi commentary of Vachaspati Mishra says Yuji Yoge is not the route to be taken while explaining the meaning of the word yoga in the context of Yoga Sutra. Yujiri Yoga may be applicable to the other disciplines of yoga, where they say Jivatma Paramatma Sanyoga, Yoga Sanyoga Ityuktaha Jivatma Paramatmanoho, but that meaning does not apply here in the Patanjali Yoga Shastra. So Yuja Samadho is the route which is to be taken as the authority which gives us the meaning Samadhi, which is further described and elaborated upon in the Yoga Shastra. So a clarity of meaning of Yoga Shastra is padded up or supported by the Vyakarana Shastra, by the Jnana of the Vyakarana Shastra. And it doesn't end there. In Yoga Vartika, it says that the Yuja Samadhi that the Shabdikas say is different from the Samadhi that the Yoga Shastra has. So further, more and more such analysis, deeper, in-depth analysis are possible of what exactly is the meaning of the word Samadhi, which the grammarians intend, and what exactly is Samadhi that is described in the Yoga Shastra. So such deeper, authentic discussions can further happen only when there is a starting point or a source of reference like Vyakarana, which gives the support. So this is one example for Padarthokti on the word, on determining the meaning of the word yoga itself in the context of Yoga Sutra. From yoga, let us move to bhoga. So another example, and bhoga is also a yogic term only. So we have this sutra that is Satimule Tadvipako Jatyāyur Bhogaha, the 13th sutra in the second chapter. What is the meaning of the word bhoga in the Yoga Sutra? To this, Bhoja in his commentary, Bhoja, Rajamartanda commentary, has written a Rajamartanda commentary in the 10th century. So he gives a beautiful interpretation to the meaning of the word bhoga in the context of yoga. So what he says, Vishayaha Indriyani Sukha Dukkha Samvicha. So the meaning of bhoga is Vishayaha, the objects of senses. The meaning of the word bhoga is the sense organs. The meaning of the word bhoga is Sukha Dukkha Samvicha, the experience of Sukha and Dukkha. So threefold meanings are given to the word bhoga in the context of Yoga Shastra, the 2 Sutra 2.13 by Rajamartanda. How come he gives this threefold meaning to the word bhoga? For this, he has taken recourse to Vyakarana. He says, Karma, Karana, Bhava Sadhana Vyutpatya, Bhoga Shabdasya. Because the word bhoga can be derived vyutpatti by the karma, karana and bhava sadhana approaches. So what does this mean? Let's see. What is karma vyutpatti? So bhujyante ye te bhogaha. This is karma vyutpatti. Those that are experienced, that is bhoga, the objects of the senses. So this speaks about the karma phala. So karma phala is experienced in 3 ways by any Jivatman in the next birth. One is Jati, Ayu and Bhoga. Jati is the species of birth, human being, cat, cow, etc. That is one karma phala, one aspect of karma phala. Ayu is lifespan, and the third aspect is Bhoga. So in the life that is taken, what are all the objects that a person will be experiencing? Will he have a own house? Will he own a car? Will he have jewelry, etc.? So what are all the objects? So that is bhoga, and then that is attained by the karma vyutpatti, those that are experienced. Then karana vyutpatti, the instrument. So this is the object-oriented derivation, and this is instrumental derivation of the same word bhoga using the same word bhujya, where it says bhujyate yebhihi iti bhogaha, those by which one experiences. So this is the instrumental derivation, the sense organs. See, how do we enjoy the objects of the senses? By the sense organs. So they become the meaning of the word bhoga by the instrumental derivation. By that, the indriyas become bhoga. So that is also karma phala. Indriyas are also karma phala. Whether I will have good eyesight, will I be able to hear properly? So whether there will be no impairment because of karma phala. Karma phala also includes the proper functioning of, or the nature of functioning of the senses. Will there be impairment, or will there be any physical challenges, etc. So that aspect is also karma phala, derived by the instrumental derivation of the word bhoga, which comes from Vyakarana jnana. And then there is bhava sadhana vyutpatti, where bhujyate iti bhogaha, the act of experiencing. So what are all the kinds of experience that a person in the due to karma phala will have? The experience of happiness and sorrow. Sukha, will he lead a happy life, or will his life be full of dukkha? So all this derivation for one word, that is bhoga. So the word bhoga means objects of the senses. The word bhoga means the sense organs. The word bhoga means the experience of happiness and sorrow. All these meanings are packed within the word bhoga used by Patanjali, Satimule Tadvipako Jatyayur Bhogaha. And these meanings can be unpacked only with the Vyakarana Jnana of Karma Karana Bhavasadhana Vyutpatti, who is capable. These keys are accessible only to the person who is empowered with the Vyakarana Jnana. So in Padarthokti, and again, staying with the second aspect, that is Padarthokti, let me give one more example, which is indeed very practical, solves a very critical question. In Hatha Yoga, there is this Uddiyana Bandha. What is Uddiyana Bandha? Means it is drawing the abdomen back, very much back. So among the three bandhas, Jalandhara Bandha, Mula Bandha, and Uddiyana Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha is drawing the abdomen very much back. So now there is a controversy, or there is a discussion in the practice tradition, and also in the text. Text say that Uddiyana Bandha happens when the breath is within. In the practice tradition, we see after the breath is exhaled, only the abdomen can be drawn back, which sounds very sensible. Means that's how it is done normally. But what is the meaning of the word? And then Uddinam kurute smad avishrantam mahakhagaha Uddiyanam tadevasa tatra bandho vidhiyate. These are the verses that describe Uddiyana Bandha, which is explained in the commentary. Utpurvat being vihayasa gatav ityasmat karane lut. This is the Hatha Yoga Pradipika Jyotsna commentary, which says, so on doing which bandha, the prana flies into the sushumna nadi, which essentially means if the prana or the breath has to fly into the sushumna nadi, the breath should remain within. So that meaning, the classical meaning of Uddiyana Bandha, or the classical practice, the clarity that the classical practice of Uddiyana Bandha can happen only when the breath is within Antah Kumbhaka. That is clarified through the very derivation of the etymology, where being Vihayasa Gatav and the Uddiyana Bandha. But of course, there is a Sahaja Uddiyana Bandha which is practiced after exhaling. So to attain the entry of prana into Sushumna, this classical Uddiyana Bandha has to be done. There is a Sahaja Uddiyana Bandha which is done elsewhere also. But this clarity that what exactly the text say is arrived even by derivation of the word Uddiyana Bandha through the Vyakarana. So Padarthokti, for Padarthokti, the Prakriti Pratyaya Jnana is very essential, and that is achieved through the Vyakarana Shastra only. And then in this same way, Vigraha, the third aspect of Vyakhana is Vigraha, where we see that splitting of the compounds. For example, in certain places, you can see in Yoga, Drashtradrishya Sanyogaha iti tu vaktavye Pruthak Vibhakti Grahanam Tayor Bhinna Jatiyatva Khyapanarsam. Sutra 2.17. Drashtradrishyayo Sanyogo Heya Hetuhu. What is the Heya Hetu? What is the cause of suffering? The sutra reads Drashtradrishyayoho Sanyogaha. There, Drashtradrishya Sanyoga, the compound could have been done, but the compound is not chosen by Patanjali. So he has split it. Drashtradrishyayoho Sanyogaha. He has kept it separate. Why? Prithak Vibhakti Grahanam Tayor Bhinna Jatiyatva Khyapanatham. See, Drashta, the seer, the consciousness, Drishyam, the object, the body, mind, senses, etc. A compound has not been done here. Why? To show that in reality, there cannot be a conjunction between the Drashta and Drishyam. For that, Patanjali has not done the samasa there, though samasa is possible. So this subtle philosophical flavor of the words can be grasped only when we see samasa or absence of samasa, which comes from the knowledge of Vyakarana, and much more practical application of samasa, very critical application of samasa comes when we consult the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, where we see there is a prescription of certain diet. Abhyasa kale prathamam shastam kshirajya bhojanam. So the word that we have to focus upon is kshirajya bhojanam. In the preliminary practice of pranayama, kshirajya bhojanam has to be taken. So what is kshirajya bhojanam? Kshira, Adya, Bhojanam. Very common, used in other regional languages also. Bhojanam means a meal. A meal. So the general meaning that we get is a meal with milk, a meal of, it can be a meal of milk and ghee. So then a doubt will come in the mind of the practitioner. So in the beginning stages of pranayama, should I eat only milk or consume only milk and ghee? To that, the commentator clarifies, no need for only liquid or semi-solid diet of milk and ghee alone. The commentator, taking recourse to Vyakarana Samasa Shastra, he says, Kshiram Dugdham Ajyam Ghritam Tad Yuktam Bhojanam Kshirajya Bhojanam Shakaparthivaadivat Samasaha. See, that is an interesting samasa. Shakaparthivaha, the vegetable king. So vegetable king, what does this mean? So for that the samasa is done. Shakapriyaha Parthivaha, a king, Parthivaha, who is Priya, fond of Shaka. So there the word Priya is dropped. So the samasa is Madhyamapadalopa samasa. So Shakaparthivaha. Similarly here also, there is a elision or a dropping of the word here. A word is dropped. So in the process of samasa, which means Kshirajya Yuktam Bhojanam, means a food or a meal which includes milk and ghee, and a bhojanam is not merely kshira and ajya. So this Madhyamapadalopa samasa gives the clarity that one need not only take these milk products along with the food, along with the rice, one has to add milk and also ghee sufficiently in the beginning stages of pranayama. So such is the very critical role of Vyakarana in the practice or dietary aspect for a practitioner of pranayama. And similarly again,
Jayaramanji, time check.
I will wrap it up. In the same way for Vakya Yojana, there are so many examples. Akshepasya Samadhanam also, there are examples from Vyakarana Shastra. I'll just wrap it up in another 3 minutes. So as we could see, for correct spelling of words, what are all the meanings possible to be taken, and then what is Dhātupāṭha, what is the meaning to be accepted and what to reject, understand the classical meaning, and then avoiding general perception and what is the context specific meaning, philosophical flavor and subtleties that is to be grasped by explaining the compound there, Drashtradrishya Sanyoga. Correct dietary principle even is understood by Vyakarana Shastra, and so on and so forth. So it is undeniable that Vyakarana is very essential in the context of Yoga Shastra. To state in conclusion, so Vyakarana actually empowers with the grammatical frameworks to safeguard us from misinterpretation and also to see new lights of meanings. And then but nothing is easy. Vyakarana is also not easy. Similarly, practice of Yogasana is also not easy. Bending the back, stretching forward, stretching laterally. All this is not easy at all. Vyakarana is also, anything new is not easy. Hence, perceived difficulty is not an excuse not to study Vyakarana. One has to put in the effort if one wants authentic knowledge. If one has to have the pure Ganga Jala, one has to go to the Gangotri in the same way. So, if not going to the level of Kaumudi or Bhashya as elaborated by the previous speakers, at least the Bhasha Abhyasa, we have to converse. As we converse, the words will start flowing. So then we can understand what could be the correct sandhi. So intuitively, certain sandhis and samasas will come to us as we do the Bhasha Abhyasa. And also, if Vyakarana sounds very boring, at least the study of yoga literature with the Vyakhyana Parampara, Vyasa, Bhoja, Sadashiva Brahmendra, all these Vyakyanakaras are there who have adhered to Vyakarana principle. So let us approach the Yoga Shastra with the commentaries. Then, by implication, we will get into Vyakarana Shastra. The Vyakyanakaras will take us through with the help of Vyakarana only. They will help us explain. So if not Vyakarana study exclusively, let us study yoga literature with the Vyakyanas, then Vyakarana study is also implied therein. So, these are the, hence we can see that to refine our intellect, Agama is essential, like practice and the Anumana as Agama and Anumana, as Abhyasa and Anumana is essential for any study. Agama or authentic knowledge is very essential, and that authentic knowledge comes through the Swadhyaya, Sushtu Adhyaya comes through the study of Vyakarana. And This is not mere statement. I'll just share one effort by the Indica textual division. We have created a Shabda Yoga web repository where an analytical textual web repository of yoga terms are there, where each and every Yoga Sutra terms are analyzed with the prefix, root, and suffix analysis. And then we have the lexical entries for the same yoga words, and also references. What are all the shades in which those words are used in Yoga Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which are very critical texts in Yoga Shastra. So this can be seen in these two links. So which will help us, which will connect us, which will connect the yoga practitioners to Vyakarana, and thereby connect us to the pure and authentic source of knowledge of yoga. I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Jayaramanji. As always, superbly textually grounded and simultaneously flowing and accessible. Reminder to all of us of how Swadhyaya is integral to sadhana and how Vyakarana is indispensable to Swadhyaya. After that reminder of Swadhyaya, it's time for us to go to the Adhyeta or the Vidyarthi, which our next speaker will be speaking about. Satyan Sharmaji is a guest faculty at the Department of Sanskrit, Punjab University, Chandigarh. His field of specialization is Darshana Shastra, and he has currently submitted his PhD thesis titled A Critical Study of Ananda Jnana's Tarka Sangraha, which is based on a rare Vedantic text from the 12th to the 13th centuries CE. Dharma Shastras and the way they were practiced during the ancient times is one of his areas of interest, particularly the accessibility of Shastric knowledge across social classes, which will be the focus of his presentation right now. Over to you, Satyanji.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'll now share the presentation. Just a second. Share. Yeah. So the title of my presentation is Accessibility of, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. Accessibility of Vyakarana across social classes. Clues from Dharma Shastra, Itihas, and historical records. Within Itihas and historical records, I have also included the indirect references from other Sanskrit texts also. First of all, I'll begin with the types of language that has been indicated in one of the major Dharma Shastras, which is Manusmriti. In the 10th chapter, verse 45, we get to know of two speeches, mainly of two speeches. One is Aryavak and the other is Mlechavak. This point, the Prakaran was about the Pratilomas and Anulomas, mainly the Jatis which are outside the fold of the four Varnas, because there is no fifth Varna. Here it is indicated that even the Jatis beyond the four Varnas used to speak Aryavak, and that did not actually upgrade their social status, if that's how we see it now. So language and social status were not directly connected, it seems, in those days. So we have Aryavak speakers who are not within the four Varna system, mainly as it is detailed in the next verses of both Anulomas and Pratilomas. Next, a passing mention of a Shudra Guru and a Shudra Shishya is found in the 3rd chapter of Manusmriti, the verses in front of you. There is Shudra Shishya and Guru. Here the Guru is taken to be Shudra Guru. The Guru of the Shudra and the Shishya of the Shudra both. These both are Brahmanas as per the Prakarana. And Medhatithi and Kuluk Bhatt in their commentaries tell what subject was being taught by the Shudra who is teaching the Shudra Shishya, or the Guru, the Brahman Guru who is teaching the Shudra. The subject is Vyakarana and so forth. Here they say Vyakaranadi Vidyasu or Vyakaranadau. So we get an indication that Shudras were not only learning Vyakarana, they were also teaching Vyakarana in those times, in the time of Manusmriti. Although the reference is very kind of negative, because these kind of Brahmanas, the Shudra Shishya and the Shudra Guru Brahmanas, are not to be invited in the Daiva or Pitri rituals. But there is no negation or there is no prohibition of such teaching, because in the next verses we'll see that such teaching can be taken as a profession during the Apadharma period. So next is the verse which I was talking about. This is in the 10th chapter. There are 10 ways to earn one's livelihood in case one cannot earn a livelihood through the jobs or professions prescribed by the Shastra for their own Varna or Jati. Medha Tithi specifies that this is for all Manushyas or all Purushas. Sarva Purushanam Ayam Vidhi. This is what he says. One of these professions is Vidya. In the commentaries, almost all the commentaries, all the traditional commentaries agree that the Vidya excludes the Veda and includes all other Vidyas. Examples are given as Tarka, Vaidyaka, and so forth. The previous mention of Vyakarana, the Shudra teaching the Vyakarana, the Vyakarana Shastra can also be included in this list, because the exclusion is only for Veda, because it is said to be not a dharma of the Apatkala. So the restrictions regarding the Veda will be carried on, but the other Shastras are open to be learnt and to be taught. So here the Vidya in the sense of profession is Bhritaka Dhyapana. So if I am following the Apadharma, the Vidya as Apadharma profession, I'll teach certain Shastras in lieu of a fees. And here we can add the Vyakarana also. And if such a profession is provided for almost all people, all Manushyas, all Purushas, there needs to be a system under which all people can learn such Shastras. Otherwise, the Dharma Shastra would not provide it for all people as an Apadharma profession. So it seems that there was a system where Vyakarana Shastra, Tarka Shastra, Vaidyaka Shastra could be learnt by almost all people across the social classes. And the Vyakarana, which is the most important for other Shastras also, as has been told by other speakers, other distinguished speakers today. Without Vyakarana, we cannot proceed with other Shastras, then let alone teach them. So it seems that Vyakarana was definitely available, accessible across social classes. And now about the non-Vedic Vyakarana, as has been pointed out, that Pāṇini and Vyakarana is truly a Vedāṅga, because it has the sutras for Vedic Sanskrit also. In the commentaries on Manusmriti 2.168, Medha Tithi and Govindaraj point out that before a person receives an Upanayana, a Trivarnik, before he receives the Upanayana, the Vedāṅga which has the Veda Vakyas cannot be studied by him. So it also tells that those Vedāṅgas which do not have the Veda Vakyas can be studied by the person who has not undergone an Upanayana, the Upanayana Sanskar. So here the distinction is clear that Vyakarana being a Vedāṅga, for example, the major sutras which are not about Vedic Sanskrit, which are about Laukik Sanskrit basically, can be studied by those who are who aren't either eligible for Upanayana or those who haven't received an Upanayana. So Laukik Sanskrit can be studied in a traditional manner by various people who are either not eligible or have not received Upanayana. So this also opens the door for other social classes. And for those who are considered below the Shudras, because there are 4 Varnas and then there are Jatis, the Sankaras and the Vratyas. So Manusmriti clarifies on this point that the Apadhvansajas, which contains certain Anulomajas and Pratilomajas also, these are eligible for the same dharmas as the Shudras. Same interpretation, a similar interpretation has also been given by Shesha Krishna in his specific text on Shudras, which is Shudrachara Shiromani in the first Pariched. Also in Aṣtādhyāyī and Mahabhashya, The term Shudra also includes the other jatis that are considered below the Shudras, the Pratilomajas and Alomajas also. So the word Shudra, wherever there is a dharma for which the Shudra is eligible, it seems that other jatis, both Anulomaj and Pratilomaj jatis, also were eligible for that, as has also been indicated in the verse 10.116 of Manusmriti, which is applicable to all Purushas or Manushyas. Here are some excerpts from Sanskrit speech given by Medhatithi in his Bhashya on Manusmriti. On 2.238, Medhatithi shows or depicts a Chandal speaking about Laukika Dharma to a Brahmacharin, and the sentences are very clear. He tells about how he's speaking in Sanskrit probably. Kuluk Bhatt does not agree with his interpretation of this the word Paradharma, which has been used in this verse. Yet he does not criticize him for depicting a Chandal speaking in Sanskrit. Then in Manusmriti 8272, he shows a Shudra speaking Sanskrit because he has some knowledge of Vyakarana. As you can see, evam adi Vyakaran lesha jnanataya dundukatvena darpavanta Shudra upadishanti. And he gives the sentences like ayante swadharma iyam va iti kartavyata maivam karshi chandasosi, and the rest of the vakyas also. So we here a Shudra has been told that he knows some Vyakarana at least, and because the reference was a little negative, the rest of the part of the commentary is in a positive sense. So he knows the Vyakarana, and hence he speaks a very perfect kind of a Sanskrit. So here also we can see that the Anupanitas or Anupanayas are also learning Vyakarana and speaking Sanskrit. In Yajnavalkya Smriti also we find some indication of the excess of Vidya for Shudras also. The Vidya Sthanas have been mentioned in the first chapter and the third verse of Yajnavalkya Smriti. The term Vidya has also been used for Upanishads or Adhyatmiki Vidya, as per multiple commentaries on Yajnavalkya Smriti 1.101. Then there is a verse in the first chapter, verse number 116, which says Avidya karma vayo bandhu vittair manya yatha kramam etaih prabhutai shudropi vardhake manamarhati. Although it is said that having Vidya, Karma, Vayah, Bandhu and Vitt, these are the Manyatva Karanas, the causes for becoming a Manya within various Varnas and various social classes. Although the Shudra would receive such Manyata at a certain age, at a very senior age, yet it implies very specifically that Shudra can also possess Vidya, because all these things, Etaih Prabhutai, the commentaries say Samastai. Some commentaries interpret Vidya differently, and some interpret it very specifically as the 14 Vidya Sthanas, out of which we can rule out the Veda because of the tradition and various interpretations. Vyakarana is one of them because it mentions the Vedāṅgas also. And as we have seen earlier, there are two types of Vedāṅgas, two types of Vyakarana. One is for the Laukik purposes, and the other, basically the one which does not contain the Vedic Veda Vakyas. And the Laukik Vyakarana, which may also be called a Vedāṅga by Upachar, but it is not technically Vedāṅga. So it can also be studied by the Shudras, although it does not lead to Manyatva in a strict sense until a certain age. Next is Shudrachar Shiromani by Shesha Krishna. He touches on the point of non-Vedic Vyakarana. He says that the Vedāṅga Vyakarana, which is specifically the Arsha, the example he gives is Pāṇini Adi. He adds Adi, maybe he refers to other Vyakarana Shastras also, which contain the Vedic Sutras. The text has some errors, so I have amended a certain error in this. So he says, Yaccha Vyakarana Marsham Pāṇini Adi Tat Smrititvad Vedāṅgatvad Pratishidhyate Yacchavaidikam Tattu Nityame Vapraptam Vedanupakarakattvena Tatra Vidhera Bhavat. So the important portion, maybe the text, the next versions of the published text may have some corrections in this. What I can get from it is there is no Vidhi Vakya for Laukik Sanskrit Vyakarana or the Avaidik Sanskrit Vyakarana. The Vedic Vyakarana, specifically the Vedic Sutras, or the Sutras which explain the Vedic Sanskrit, are not to be studied because they are specifically for the study of Vedas. The other one, which is Avaidik, may be studied because there is no Vidhi. It is Aprapta, and there is no Pratishedh for that because it is Aprapta. And looking at this in the light of the previous mentions, where the Veda Vakyas, the Vedāṅgas which do not have Veda Vakyas, that they can be studied by those who are not Upanit yet, and by that formula, those who are Anupaneya, those who cannot undergo Upanayana, they can also study the Avaidik Sanskrit Vyakarana. And in this manner, you can also see that the Jyotish Shastra and Chandas Shastra, if we divide them into two categories of the Laukik and the Vedic, even the Chandas Shastra has a lot of Laukik sutras. In that case, those may be also studied by various people, including the Shudras and the other social classes, because the Vidhi Vakya for the Vedādhyayana does not govern the Laukik portions per se. So this also you can connect it with the previous Medhatithis and Govindaraja's Bhashya on Manusmriti 2168. Then the Vidyarambha Sanskar, which seems to be ignored a lot these days, which is to be considered as a formal entry into education for all children who have attained the age of 5 years or so. It is sometimes differentiated from Akshara Swikar or Akshararambha, and sometimes it is taken as the same. This sanskar has been mentioned in various Nibandha or the compilation texts such as Sanskara Deepika and others. And it also has been mentioned in Shudra Dharma Tattva, authored by Kamalakar Bhatt, which is specifically meant for Shudras and their Achar and Sanskaras. This is the door for the Anupanayas, those who cannot undergo Upanayana. They get the formal entry into education from this. And the prayogas, you can look for them in the text, for example, as Sanskar Deepak, for example. They mention the prayogas, and there the Shastras are also mentioned, which are to be taught to the child, which include the Darshana Shastras, the Vyakarana, and others also. So this can be considered as the door, the formal Dharma Shastric door for the Anupanayas or the Anupanitas to enter into study. And then the clues about access to Shastras for Shudras from the Dharma Shastra itself. Govinda Swami on Baudhayan Dharma Sutra 1.5.10.20 explains the word Aryadhishtita Shudra as the Shudra who wants to hear the Shastras. Aryadhishtita Aryat Shastradi Shushrushavah. Then in Medhatithi's Bhashya on 9.335 Manusmriti, he explains the adjective Mriduvak for a Shudra, and he explains it as that the Shudra should not speak harshly, although he possesses the knowledge of Shastras like Tarka and so forth. Mriduvak na Tarka Tarkadi Shastra Gandhitaya Parushabhashi. And on Manusmriti 12.3.6, he notes that certain people expounded Shastras to Shudras to gain popularity. Seems like it was not regarded as a bad thing in around the 10th or 11th century. He says Shudrebhya Shastra Vyakhyana as something which could give popularity to the person. Itihas, there is one reference which is open to interpretation by various scholars if it is literal or suggestive only. In Valmiki Ramayana 1.6 verse 15, it has been said that there was no one in the Dasharatha's Ayodhya who did not possess the knowledge of 6 Vedāṅgas, which includes Vyakarana. So he also had Shudras in his Rajya, and those Shudras were following their own Swadharma. It has also been mentioned in the same chapter in the subsequent verses, which means that, again, keeping this in the light of the previous references, it is possible that they were actually studying the Laukik portions of the Vedāṅgas at the least. And hence there was a formal system for their entry into the Shastras. Then the Vyakarana Shastra, who is the Adhikaran, generally, in a general sense, the Adhikarans, as mentioned in the Udyota on Patanjali's Mahabhashya, and also Vasudeva's commentary on Anubhuti Swarupacharya's Saraswata Vyakarana, it simply mentions the person who wants to know Shabda or Shabda Shastra as the Adhikaran. So here also there is no Apashudra Adhikaran like thing that is into play. Then there is an indirect mention which I would like to point out in Brahma Sutra Shankar Bhashya, in where I infer the Sanskrit literacy of the Shudras. On Brahma Sutra 1334, which is the part of Apashudra Adhikarana, here it begins. Adi Shankaracharya mentions two kinds of samarthya with regards to the knowledge of Vedas. One is Laukik and the other is Shastriya. Shastriya is the one with the when a child learns Vedas through Upanayan and proper formal ways, as has been spoken of in the Shastras. The Laukik samarthya is explained by Vachaspati Mishra, which includes the methods like reading books and so forth. And he acknowledges that the Shudra can get knowledge of the Vedas by reading books and the other methods also, using other methods, which implies that the Shudras of his time, at least, may have had a very good knowledge, a very good command of over Sanskrit and its Vyakarana. And maybe they also had knowledge of the Vedic Vyakarana also, because even if reading Vedas, they need to know the verb forms and the swaras and everything else. So it seems that they had some idea in those times. And similar also has been discussed by Appaya Dikshit in his Nyaya Rakshamani in the same Adhikarana. Then the historical records. This is from 1838 by William Adams in his report on Bengal and Bihar, basically. And he says that Sanskrit learning is to a certain extent open to all classes of native society, whom inclination, leisure, and the possession of adequate means may attract to its study, and beyond that limit, it is confined to Brahmins. The inferior castes may study grammar and lexicology, poetical and dramatic literature, rhetoric, astrology, and medicine, but law, the writings of the 6 schools of philosophy, and the sacred mythological poems are the peculiar inheritance of the Brahmin castes. Again, here, the study of grammar, for example, which is the topic of today's talk, is said that the inferior castes, or you can say all classes of the native society, could study such subjects except for the writings of the 6 schools of philosophy, law, and the itihasas, as has been mentioned, itihasas and Puranas also, which seems like a change, as in Manusmriti 10.116 it has been mentioned that as per the commentaries, that even Tarka Shastra, which is one of the 6 schools of philosophy, could be studied and taught by various people, various social classes. Here you seem to see a change, and yet the grammar and lexicology and other things are have been told that the inferior castes or all classes of the native society are open to learn these texts. Then here is from 1849 from Kanpur. Under the Sanskrit schools, it has been noted, the detail of numbers is in front of you. These schools are for the instruction of the Maratha children whose parents either are the servants or reside in the Peshwa's Jagir. The Sanskrit grammar books which have been mentioned are Sarasut, which is probably the Saraswata Vyakarana or Saraswat Prakriya, Chandrika and Balabhadri. These also seem to be the texts which have compressed the Pāṇini's Vyakarana to a very only based on what is required, basically, as has been pointed out by Samya ji. Then you have from the Punjab 1882 post annexation. As for grammar, lexicology, rhetoric, the drama, and all other secular literature, not law or philosophy, the Shudras were ever allowed to study these subjects. This is from his book History of Indigenous Education in the Punjab since annexation and in 1882, page 90. Then you find a change being observed in the northwestern provinces of Bengal Presidency, a report from 1844. The study of the law and of the 6 schools of philosophy, which are the peculiar inheritance of the Brahminical caste, is now neglected, while grammar, lexicology, poetical and dramatic literature, rhetoric, astrology, and medicine, to which even Shudras were permitted access, are now monopolized by that caste. Now you can see the change that the subjects which were open even to Shudras, and the types of Shudras, you can include them also within this, are now have now become monopolized by the Brahminical caste, because they have left they have neglected the study of their own peculiar subjects. It seems that the changes were very late. The restrictions came very late, if ever there were any restrictions. And the kind of castes that have been mentioned on the previous pages are in front of you, which include Badhais, Ahirs, and Nais, and the Sanskrit books which I've mentioned include the Laghu Kaumudi, which is probably the Laghu Siddhant Kaumudi, Shrutabodh, Saraswati, and Chandrika. And I conclude hereby that it can be safely said that there was a system in place by the tradition itself, where a variety of social classes, especially with reference to Manusmriti 10:116 and the other verses also, that social classes beyond the Dvijas were permitted to learn Vyakarana and other Shastras, usually excluding the Vedas. Sanskrit learning was traditionally not restricted to the Dvijas. Wherever such restrictions may have cropped up, the actual reason behind them could be searched elsewhere, because the tradition seems to be very unanimous in the point, keeping in mind both the direct references and the indirect references and the commentaries spanning through a long period of time. They all seem to suggest that the access to Shastras, especially to Vyakarana, Tarka Shastra, excluding the Vedas, was open, and Vyakarana being the door to all other Shastras, a general accessibility of it seems to have provided a variety of social classes and access to other Shastras too. As has been said by other distinguished speakers today, Vyakarana is the basic need, as Samya Krishnapurji has explained the definition of Bal, that he has to study the Vyakarana first, because without Vyakarana he cannot study Tarka Shastra and other Shastras also. And we have seen that Tarka Shastra seems to have been open to all to a variety of classes to be studied and even to be taught. So Vyakarana being the backbone of the study of Shastras, it seems that it was definitely open to be studied, especially the Laukik form. So here I end my presentation. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope I have been honest in the interpretation of these references, and if there are any odd mistakes that have crept up in the interpretation, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Satyan Sharma. In the interest of time, I'll request Arvind to provide a lightning summary before we hand it over to Dr. Pathuri. And I just want to mention over here that this entire symposium is Arvind's brainchild. I'd like to thank Arvind for taking that initiative. And over to you, Arvind, for the symposium summary.
Thank you, Meghji. So we began this morning with this beautiful artist's impression shared by Meghji of how Maharshi Pāṇini says he has built this Bhasha Bhavana, this mansion or this grand edifice of language. And Dr. Samya Krishnapurji showed us how children are kind of led by the hand to navigate this through the ages, over 1,000 years from Dharmakirti to Rajaraja Varma. And she left us with this mixture of enthusiasm and humility for how to approach this grand edifice. And from Professor Korada Subramanyam ji, we learned how Maharshi Pāṇini didn't have this peephole vision of Vyakarana as just focused on a pada, but the vision which is expansive, extending all the way to Vakya and Mahavakya, and also how the Vyakaranas did not neglect the relationship between pada and padartha, and how their contributions on pada-padartha relations till now informs education in literature, not just limited to Sanskrit. The fun facts we heard from Mahapadhyay ji was how a discipline like Jyotisha, which one would think is not directly related to Vyakarana, etc., was an area of interest both for Maharshi Pāṇini and Jaimani. From Dr. Sharda Narayanan ji, we had an astonishing range of both a microscopic emphasis even beneath the pada at the level of varnas and sounds and how they subserve poetry in the sense of shabda, and also a more zoomed out, soaring view of Artha, which still nevertheless conformed to grammar, in that the Padartha relation between an Upamana and an Upameya also conforms to such things as the gender matching, like the Mati of Yudhishthira or his intellect, and a Karini rather than just Kari. Dr. Jayaraman, as speaking of yoga, in a sense, reiterated the message which Dr. Samya Krishnapur left us with in the initial talk on cultivating the same mix of humility as well as enthusiasm, because none of this comes easy and there are challenges. And to Satyan Sharma, we are grateful for showing us that whatever the challenges, the voice of the ancients is one which invites all of us as Balaha to drink of this knowledge and be nourished by it. So I'm grateful to all of the speakers and Meghji, Hariji, Nagaraji, the entire Indica team, Srinivasji, Koti Ramprasadji. It's now my pleasure to turn it over to our Chief Curator and Director, Dr. Nagaraj Patuliji. Over to you, sir.
Namaste. Thank you, Arvindji. Thank you, Meghji. There are various topics that we are choosing for this new initiative of us in the name of symposium, where selected speakers are giving talks, expert speakers are giving talks on specialized topics, scholarly topics. And this particular symposium is being organized by one of the wings of Indica called Center for Bharatiya Languages, which is being led by Sri Megh Kalyana Sundaramji. And this initiative of a symposium on Vyakarana has been, as Sri Meghji was mentioning, it is the brainchild of Sri Arvind IRG. Professor Korada Subramanyam ji, Mahapadhyaya, Professor Korada Subramanyam ji is a favorite topic, Vyakarana, Akyapadiya, is chosen today, and this is his day. Actually, that is why Sri Meghji had to stop him at some point. It is a flow, an incessant Ganga Pravaha of knowledge in his favorite area that was happening. And we have all these other scholars like Soumya Krishnanji, from a very long time engaged in teaching Vyakarana, Sanskrit, and Jayaraman ji engaged in teaching yoga and yoga texts, and he is the leading person for our own textual research in yoga. And we have our own Sharda Narayanan ji, who is also from the teaching area. She is teaching at a department of Natya, but her background is in Vakyapadiyam and Alankara Shastra and other areas. She has written books and Mimamsa also. But we have this breed of Sri Meghji, Sri Arvindji, and others who are entering into this area of academic research in Shastras and other things with a corporate background. That's what actually is quite assuring, quite promising, and creates a great hope for the future of Indic studies in this country. There was an article in the Hindu, typically a leftist approach newspaper, where the writer was weeping that this is happening because they thought that the university Sanskrit scholarship was not able to cater to the modern needs, and they were happy about it. But this unexpected development that the corporate background scholars are entering into Indic studies, particularly Shastra areas, is surprising and shocking to them. And they were expressing that agony on their side that this was happening. And these people with their scientific background, because they went there from areas like engineering and science and technology, they have a very logical and rational thinking background, and they are contributing to these areas. So Sri Arvind ji is coming from that background. He has been contributing to our conferences from that perspective. They're entering into Shastras, and their curiosity and enthusiasm in the Shastras is quite useful, promising, and admirable. Coming to my own person, among many other things, Vyakarana is my favorite field also. Actually, when something happens in this field, I start thinking, how did it happen without my knowledge? Vyakarana, and something happens, and okay, it's good that youngsters are taking up this topic with their own initiative. You cannot always keep doing things where you think you are good at. So it's always better the next generation takes it up and takes it forward. Coming to the various topics that are covered today, Vyakarana as a meta discipline was the title. Actually, let's not go with the actual title, whether the title has been properly covered or not. For example, if we come to Satyan Sharmaji's talk, which is at the end, it is actually talking about the accessibility of Vyakarana. Why accessibility of Vyakarana and meta discipline? Unless it is a meta discipline, why it should have access to all the people? That is the logic behind it. Otherwise, the actual paper is not talking about the meta links of Vyakarana to the other Shastras or any other thing. But it's a very, very important historical study, documented, well-referenced study of how Vyakarana was a Shastra which had access to all the communities. And starting with Arvind Ayarji's introductory talk this morning, he started with the difference between grammar and Vyakarana. My research dissertation on Vakyapadiyam in 87, I had a chapter, I had a section called Grammars to Vyakarana, explaining how in the history of ideas, Western society, through general linguistics that developed after philology, comparative linguistics, historical linguistics, all these were already happening, and general linguistics was developing. Bloomfield and Saussure were the people who were giving in almost around the same time, 1928, Language by Bloomfield was being published. So that time when general linguistics was emerging, they were starting to think in terms of language analysis, linguistics, as a methodology, as a method of analyzing language. But by the time Vyakarana was emerging in India, millennia ago, already the word Vyakarana is not grammar. For Western society, for the international society, it is only from the ancient Greek grammar that they evolved up to linguistics in 1928, which is analysis of language. Grammar was not that. Grammar, the Greek grammar was called technique grammatike. And the word grammatike comes from the Greek root graphein. And that root means to write. So technique grammatike literally means techniques of writing. So it was almost in our terminology, in the Shastra, Sanskrit Shastra terminology, the Greek Technogrammatike was a Śikṣā grantha, and that too focusing on how to write. And our Śikṣā granthas were focusing, some of the Lakshana granthas were called Śikṣā granthas. And these Śikṣā granthas, what they were focusing, like Alankara Shastra, Chandas and other portions, they were not covered in Technogrammatike. But you have other books like the book by Cicero called Rhetoric, which was not actually meant for poetry analysis. It was meant for oratory analysis, public speech analysis. But it covered what we call Alankaras, figures of speech in that book. So from all such background in the Greek classical background of the European society, it is only in the 20th century that they started coming to Vyakarana. What we call Vyakarana, they started doing now in 20th century. What is Vyakarana? Vivichya pradarsyante anena shabdaha iti Vyakarana. It has got V, the prefix, and A, the prefix, and Kri, the dhatu, the verb root. So V, A, and Kri. Kri is to do, A is well, and V is to split. So to split well, to do the splitting well. And in Mahabhashya, Pashpashamika, you have this definition, etymological definition, where it is said that Vyakriyante vivichya pradarsyante anaya shabdaha Vyakarana. So this kind of splitting and showing happened only during the time of philology and during the time of linguistics, general linguistics emerging. So they were moving from their Technogrammatike level to the Vyakarana level. That's what I was writing in my research dissertation. So that was a very good point, that grammars, Technogrammatike, writing techniques is different from analysis, vivichya pradarshana in grammar. And as we have seen in Professor Korada Subramanyam, Professor Korada Subramanyam's talk, he was mentioning his talk in FLU, where he mentioned how Vyakarana is a Shastra which is applicable not just to Sanskrit, it is applicable to all the languages of the world. That is what they learned during the 19th century when European scholars were interested in studying comparison of their own languages to Sanskrit, and the whole idea of Indo-European language family and all that emerged. They were learning from the language that they were analyzing, the sources in that language. They were learning the methodology of analysis also. So Sanskrit was not just one of the languages that they were analyzing. It was the language in which the source books of methodological techniques were available for them to analyze their own languages also. And this ability of the Shastra called Vyakarana to be applicable to the other languages of the world, like English, was demonstrated by Professor Korada Subramanyam during his talk, and during his talk at FLU, and today also. And he was also, as a Sarvadarshana scholar, Professor Korada, was showing how other Shastras also, like Mimamsa, Nyaya, they have parallels with Vyakarana, and all of them, each of them is a meta-science. Today, our bridegroom is Vyakarana, and we are focusing all our attention on Vyakarana. In some other symposium, we can have our Mimamsa as our bridegroom, and all the focus, all the attention will be on Mimamsa, and we can show how that is a meta-discipline, and all these are connected. And in Vakyapadiyam, Bhartṛhari is very well aware of this, and he is very clearly saying, Kiyadva shakyamunnetum swatarkam anudhavata. If you are following only your logic, how much knowledge can you acquire? Prajna vivekam labhate bhinnair agama darshanaihi. This multidisciplinarity is very clearly articulated only in Vyakarana Darshana by Bhartṛhari. He is saying that Bhinnair Agama Darshanaihi, only with multiple Shastras, that Prajna Vivekam Labhate, your intellect gets the discerning ability, distinguishing ability, Vivekam Labhate, he is saying. And that you can see when you go into Vakyapadiyam, there is so much of interconnectivity. He is very clear about it. All the Padakanda chapters have the categories drawn from Nyaya, and you have in Vakyakanda words drawn from Mimamsa, and they are given completely a different Vyakaranic interpretation. And you have Vedanta in the Brahmakanda, but with a completely different Shabda Brahma approach given. One very interesting classification of sciences, classification of Shastras, that is to be paid attention, and Dr. Jayaraman ji has very clearly mentioned that in the beginning of his talk, is this trilogy, this trinity of Shastras, Yoga, Vyakarana, and Ayurveda. It is also mentioned in Vakyapadiyam. He there says Śikṣā Adhyatma Lakshana Shastraihi. Śikṣā Shastra is Ayurveda, Lakshana Shastra, and Adhyatma Shastra is Yoga. Kaya Vang Manasamalaha ye samavastitaha tesham vidhutayaha. All those are cleaned. So actually, all over the world, now it has become such a routine to speak about word, deed, and creed. Kaya, Vaka, Manasa. And all the Hindus in their puja, they mention this Kaya, Vacha, Manasa, Kayena, Vacha, all this. So these words are very well known, popular only, but those are made into a trilogy, trinity of sciences. Trikarana Shuddhi, we talk, and these three Karanas, Kaya, Vak, and Manas, they are cleaned through these three sciences. Kaya Shuddhi happens through Ayurveda, Manasa Shuddhi happens through Yoga, and it is Vak Shuddhi that happens through Vyakarana. And that is Shabda Yoga, and among audience we have our Shabda Yoga fan, great enthusiast of Shabda Yoga, B.V.K. Shastri Garu, also sitting among the audience today. And this is a yoga. Vyakarana is a yoga. And in Vakyapadiyam, that is what it is mentioned. Vyakarana is a upaya. It's an upaya for the upeya called moksha. It is mentioned that way. And to that level, it is being taken. According to Bhartṛhari, it was done by Vyādi himself in Sangraha. And that was preserved through Mahabhashya, and is just compiling those ideas back again, is what is being mentioned there. Dr. Jayaraman ji was focusing more on how this Vyakarana as a Shabda Shastra is useful in studying the Shastra texts of yoga, and how it helps in avoiding misinterpretations that are happening now. So he is cautioning us. He has been cautioning us in other seminars and symposiums and conferences also, how those who are not trained in Vyakarana have completely misinterpreted Yoga Shastra books. But the other side of usefulness of Vyakarana as a darshana is that it is very well connected with yoga, that the Manasa Shuddhi that is given by yoga is complemented by Vak Shuddhi through Vyakarana, just the way Ayurveda gives the Sharira Shuddhi. And when our own Dr. Sharda Narayanan ji was talking about usefulness of Vyakarana for poetry study, she was trying to be independent of the existing Alankara Shastra texts that have been using Vyakarana in the analysis of poetry. She was trying to, on her own, put the Vyakarana, how Vyakarana is useful in analyzing poetry with her own examples from various poetic texts. But this approach of using Vyakarana or usefulness application of Vyakarana to Alankara Shastra was happening at two levels in Alankara Shastra itself, in the study of poetry itself. At one level, books like Vakrokti Jivitam, Auchitya Vichara Charcha, whenever they talked about, say, for example, Auchityam, they were talking about Auchitya at the level of Karaka, Auchitya at the level of Pratyaya, Auchitya at the level of Upasarga, and Auchitya at the level of Varna. So they were taking categories from Vyakarana and applying Auchitya to that. And the beautiful book Vakrokti Jivitam by Kuntaka is actually beautifully building the levels of Vakrokti from Varna, then the broader Pada, then the broader Vakya, then the broader Prakarana, and the broadest Prabandha. And there he is talking about Varna Vinyasa Vakrata, the Varna level, and Pada level, Pada Purvartha and Pada Parartha Vakrata. And at the Vakya level, he is already talking about Vakya Vaichitya Vakrata. So the Arthalankaras like Upama, which Sharda Narayanan was giving as an example, all the Arthalankaras are actually Vakya Vaichitya examples only. He, with his own small examples, he shows how Vakya Vaichitya is actually, it's a grammatical analysis. You're talking about Pada Purvartha, Pada Parartha, Upasarga, and Pratyaya parts in Pada Purvartha and Pada Parartha, and the in a Samasa, Purva Pada and Uttara Pada, and in Varnas also, how Varna Vinyasa has to be analyzed. All that is being shown there in Vakrokti Jivitam. That's one kind of application of Vyakarana that was already happening. And people like Bhamaha and others, they were already talking about the usefulness of Vyakarana by saying that Yadi Shabdahvayam Jyotirāsamsaram Deepyate Atha Shishtana Shishtanam Shishtanam Sarvadha. All these words, they were actually hinting at Vyakarana. But at a different level, at a philosophical level, we have Dhanyaloka, for example, is an application of Skota, the Vyakarana Darshana, and with that application, he was bringing the entire Drishyakavya oriented discussion of rasa to a Shravyakavya oriented discussion. So from a visible poetry analysis to an audible poetry analysis to a verbal analysis, he was bringing. So he was using Vyakarana for bringing a completely new application from the analysis of visible to the audible, verbal part. And that was being continued by Abhinavagupta in his Lochana. And there again, because already Abhinavagupta was inheriting the Vyakarana Darshana's application into Tantra, in the form of what today is being called as Kashmir Shaiva Tantra. He was applying that tantric philosophical import also into Lochana, Abhinava Bharati, and other books of him. And there he is integrating this Vyakarana analysis at a philosophical level, at a theoretical level, to the analysis of poetry, audible poetry in Lochana, and visible poetry called Natya in Natya Shastra. And we have seen all these applications that are being covered by various scholars today. So this applicability of Vyakarana to various Shastras need not be considered to be limited to just the Shastras that are mentioned. For example, the topic of Dharma Shastra that was taken up by Satyan Sharma ji, though he was covering the accessibility aspect only in his talk, the interpretation of Dharma Shastras also requires a lot of Vyakarana knowledge. All the Dharma Shastra scholars that were consulted by the king in the form of Pradvivakas and Adhikaranikas. These were judicial posts in the king's court. Adhikaranika and Pradvivaka were the judicial officers. They were expected to be very good in Vyakarana, at least at the level of a basic understanding of Vyakarana. By the time Adhikaranikas and Pradvivakas were existing, Bhattoji Dikshita was also not there. So probably there were smaller, made easy methods of learning Vyakarana at that time, if not the entire Aṣtādhyāyī, some summarized versions of Aṣtādhyāyī like that of Dharmakirti or something else was being given, but these judicial officers were learning Vyakarana from that perspective. Is documented in the books where we talk about them. And the beautiful talk by Satyan Sharma ji was mentioning the accessibility of Vyakarana to all. My own anecdotal experience is when Professor Nataraja Ramakrishna, the great Natya Shastra scholar, researcher, Natyacharya, he was working on the Devadasi system. He brought some surviving Devadasis from the Mandapeta and other areas of Godavari districts to Hyderabad, to an auditorium, and they were all being shown on the stage to the audience that these are the surviving respected Devadasis on the stage. And on the stage, one Shastra scholar was mentioning some shloka, reciting some shloka. But there was a difference of opinion in the mind of one of the Devadasis about a particular patha, particular version that this Shastra scholar was reciting. And she immediately rose her hand and said, "Ayya, please stop. The version that I heard for this shloka is different. Let me recite that." And she recited, and she explained both the pathas using the sutras of Aṣtādhyāyī, explained the grammar, and said that both the pathas seem to be grammatically correct, but my patha seems to be more traditional and more accurate and more suitable to the context. She explained it using Vyakarana Shastra knowledge. And this Devadasi with such a deep Vyakarana knowledge, probably all those who were sitting Devadasis on the stage, they were equally knowledgeable in Vyakarana. But she had a chance to talk and she talked. And if this is the situation in 20th century, let us imagine how the situation of Devadasis was in the BC, in the early AD. They were so scholarly people. And in the 11th century, the Telugu poet Nannaya, when he describes Vidya Vilasa Goshti, there among the scholarly members of the August audience, he is mentioning Vilasinis also. Vilasini Parivritundayunna, he says. So this community, because this community was studying Natya Shastra, Sangeeta Shastra, and other art-related Shastras, they were all trained in Vyakarana also from millennia in this country. And when Kataya Bhima Reddy writes Vyākhyāna to Shakuntala, Vijñāna Shakuntalam, he's quoting Vyakarana immensely. He's a Reddy king. And when Vasantharajiyam is written by another Reddy king, he is also employing Vyakarana immensely. When Krishnadevaraya is writing Amukta Malyada, his expressions indicate that he was a wonderful scholar in Vyakarana. Otherwise, he cannot come up with such beautiful Sanskrit expressions in the Narikela Paka verses of Amukta Malyada. So all these are evidences for Satyan Sharmaji's mention of the accessibility of the Shastra of Vyakarana, not just in the documents, historical documents that they were attending the schools by the British time and all that, but there are books where these Shudra authors were already writing books, and their Vyakarana knowledge was getting reflected in those books. So I think I completed my formality of a recollection and reflection of today's sequence of scholarly, in-depth analytical talks, enlightening talks by different scholars. With this, I express my gladness, happiness to Sri Meghji and to Arvinda Ayarji. Your generation has to take this initiative forward and keep conducting more such symposiums for the benefit of the contemporary Indian society. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Bhartṛhari. I think we should do a separate talk on your 1987 thesis at some point of time, which is very specific to that, because I think that's an interesting nugget you shared amongst all the other synthesis that you did. So keeping an eye on time, I would like to, on behalf of Indica's Center for Bharatiya Languages, thank each and everyone who joined us today for this symposium. I'd like to mention my colleagues Koti ji and Srinivas ji and Amit and everybody else who contributed to making this symposium possible. Of course, I'd be failing if I didn't mention Harikiran Vallamani ji, who's founder of Indica. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody. Thank you so much. Namaste.